Ooh, Dan Quinn bleeding at the nose.
Did you see him go down on the sideline?
Did you see him get up? Soldier.
He's a bad man, man. So, that's how he lives. So that's how we live as well.
Right up the middle and gets his second sack of the game.
Everything that he preaches to us, we feel like we saw that in that moment.
So far, you guys love
100%. 100%. So that's gonna make it cool even harder. Yeah, man, he's a true dog. The moment he went down, he popped up on him, man. He's gonna probably cool. Man, got a little future on it, good to go. Not about nothing. Man, Coach BQ, man. He a real gangster.
Our coach, he's a real gangster. Bring that identity to Atlanta this week. Yeah, the coach took a tumble. Mariota really buried him. Marcus was a little bit emotional about that, too. He really does love Dan Quinn and everybody responsible for his current professional and personal situation. Good morning, everybody. Over the weekend, it was the 20-year anniversary of the Monday Night Miracle game. Flat out one of the most shocking endings to a Redskins game in franchise history. The Monday Night Miracle in Dallas, September of 2005. Of course, it was Santana Moss on the receiving end of two bombs from Mark Brunell to beat the Cowboys 14-13. They would play another game that was pretty stunning the following year. Remember when Troy Vincent blocked the field goal and Sean picked it up and got face masked, and then Nick Novak had a chance with the clock at 0 and an untimed down to beat the Cowboys. There has been a history of Skins Cowboys games that have been just stunning at the end, but none matches what happened 20 years ago this week. Santana Moss on the show today to reminisce about that particular night. Really good stories from Santana, including, I think, a part of that game and a part of that ending that I had never heard before, and I'm assuming that many of you had never heard before either. This from Corey to open up the show. Kevin, play Marcus Mariota again this week. The Falcons are terrible. This is another get-right game. Save JD for the Chargers. Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea, personally. Now, if he's hurt, you can't play him. If he's not 100%, you can't play him. But to view any game in this league as get-right, first of all, a get-right game can't happen 2 weeks in a row based on my personal definition of a get-right game. A get-right game comes off of a tough game, a loss, or maybe just, a win but not playing well. But more often than not, it is coming off of a loss, and you are set up with a team that you're playing that isn't that good, that is in the situation the Raiders were in. That was a get-right game. The Falcons are actually a very dangerous opponent. There's nothing get-right about Sunday's game. All you got to do, if you still don't understand what the NFL is as a week-to-week league, is just look at the first 3 weeks of the season. The teams that played horribly in week 1 bounced back with unbelievable efforts and near wins in week 2. The Giants couldn't score. They looked terrible against Washington, and they put up 500 yards and 37 points in a thrilling overtime loss against the Cowboys, covered the point spread. The Dolphins, who couldn't score against the Colts, and we thought, well, they're terrible. They bounced back in a thrilling game that they ended up losing, but they played very well in the following week against the Patriots. By the way, that Dolphins effort against the Bills last Thursday night was there. Just 2 weeks following, well, the Dolphins are the worst team in the league. Look, they may end up being that. But early in the season, week to week, how about week 2? 41-17, the Ravens over the Browns. Week 3, and the Packers beat up on Washington on Thursday Night Football. Week 3, the Browns beat the Packers outright as the biggest, or one of the biggest, underdogs on the board. Yeah, no, the worst beating in week 3 was Atlanta's beating against Carolina. That makes Atlanta the absolute play this weekend, regardless of who they're playing. You play them. By the way, the line has dropped The point spread has gone from Washington -2.5 to Washington -1 or -1.5. Why has it done that? Two reasons. Has nothing to do with Terry, and we will get to Terry here in a moment. It is probably a hedge that Jaden is not going to play against Atlanta. And number two is there's probably a lot of sharp money guessing that Atlanta will be the team this week that looked terrible last week that bounces back and plays well this week. See, the teams in the NFL, they're close. Talent-wise, they are close. This isn't college football where teams are overmatched. Nobody typically is overmatched. They might be, slightly better talent-wise or deeper, in terms of their roster. Certainly coaching plays into all of this. Timing of the game plays into all of this. We saw that last weekend, certainly with the Raiders. Short rest, west to east coast. All of that was in play for last week. Atlanta is the most dangerous team on the board Sunday. And the reason being is they actually do have talent. They have probably one of the best running back, if not the best running back tandems in the league in Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. If the Lions with Montgomery and Gibbs don't have that, they have a very good offensive line. They've got a revamped defense. Their issue, of course, is at quarterback, where they're going to be starting Michael Penix Jr. For the 7th or 8th time in his career. Second time against Washington. But they're at home. And they have a terrible, terrible taste in their mouth after last week. There is nothing get right about this game Sunday in Atlanta at all. There's nothing that should, dictate from a team standpoint, fan standpoint, whatever. We can have these conversations. But I doubt that Dan Quinn or Adam Peters or anybody actually believes Atlanta is, basically a sitting duck. Like we can beat them without our best. No, you can't. You may not be able to beat them with your best. And they're down multiple players. No, Corey, there's nothing get right about this week. It's the wrong definition anyway for this particular game. And the Falcons are not terrible. This league each year is made up of, and it's hard to identify the teams in these three categories right now. But there are, a handful, somewhere between 2 and sometimes 4 or 5 teams that by the midpoint of the season, you're like, as long as they don't have a lot of injuries, they got a shot. And then there are 2 or 3 truly terrible teams. You figure those out by about the midpoint of the season. And everybody else, the other 25 or so teams, are basically the same. And it comes down to conditions. It comes down to health. It comes down to circumstance. It comes down to luck a lot of the time in terms of who ends up on top in that particular week. Right now, my guess is that our team is in that big group of 25 teams. Now, when you get to the halfway mark, you can take those 25 teams and say, yeah, if this team stays healthy because they've got the quarterback, and that's where we'll play in those, in that end of the pool for the next many years. Because even when our team isn't in the elite group, they'll be in the middle group, but they may be towards the top of that group because of the quarterback. Where as long as he's there, they got a chance to kind of emerge out of that group or give the 3 or 4 teams in the top tier a real game when we get to the postseason. Because remember, if your top tier is even 3 or 4 or 5 teams, that still leaves another 9 that end up making the playoffs from that next group. But we don't know how those groups shake out. I would guess right now the top tier is going to be Buffalo, certainly record-wise. If the Bills stay healthy, they're 3-0 already, and their schedule, on paper, is not that tough. They have the Chiefs on the schedule. I mean, here are their next 4 games. All right, these are the Bills' next 4 games. The Saints, the Patriots, the Falcons, and the Panthers. Then they get the Chiefs at home. And then, again, none of these games are gimmies. None of them are week to week. But the Bills would be the one team, and I think for me, the only team right now, because of the way they are constructed, because of their quarterback, because of their home field advantage, because of what their schedule looks like right now. Again, matters who you play, not so much who you play, but when you play them. Buffalo should end up with, if not the best record, one of the 3 best records in the NFL, which means they're in right now. After that, I don't know if we can say that for sure about Philly. Philly's defense hasn't looked like last year's defense. Not yet. It's capable, certainly capable. Boy, they get an interesting game this week against the Buccaneers. Last year, they went to Tampa in week 4 without Devontae Smith and without A.J. Brown and without 1 or 2 of their offensive linemen. And they got run out of the building. And people looked at it in week 4 last year and said, oh, my God, the Eagles aren't very good. They were 2-2 at that point. They had lost a Monday night game to you-know-who in the Falcons in an incredible kind of fourth quarter game-winning drive. He never has any of those. And then they went to Tampa completely injured, and they got blown out. Well, this week, week 4, same place, Tampa, but Tampa's the injured team. No Mike Evans. 2 3-0 teams. And the Eagles are, sitting there. It's like, it's not about who you play. It's about when you play them, and they may be getting Tampa at the perfect time. But back to our team, regardless of who's playing quarterback Sunday, this is going to be a very difficult team because you are going to get the Falcons' absolute best. And by the way, they've already proven that their absolute best isn't that bad. They absolutely annihilated the Vikings, who just annihilated the Bengals. And you can say, well, yeah, the Bengals had Jake Browning at quarterback. Well, the Falcons that night had Michael Penix Jr. in his 5th or 6th start of his career. The Falcons defensively are talented this year, much more so than they were a year ago. Sunday is going to be an absolute one of those very difficult games to win. And if they get out of there with a win, that is like stealing one at this point, because the setup is more for Atlanta. All right, today we're going to talk about Terry here in a moment and his injury. But Quinn is set to speak at 12:30. Now, we'll monitor everything out there. Last week, if you recall, we got the news in the 11 a.m. hour, Max, that it was Marcus Mariota who was going to be the quarterback to address the media on quarterback day, which is Wednesday. And right now, Jaden Daniels is on the schedule, but they put that schedule out over the weekend. He was on the schedule last week, too. So we'll find out who's going to speak from a quarterback standpoint, maybe before Quinn talks. Because remember, by the time Quinn talked last week, we knew that Jaden wasn't going to practice on Wednesday. And then we got the news that, he still has to practice at least one of those days, Thursday or Friday. I believe this. I believe today, unlike last week, if he practices, he's playing. If he's out there practicing today, then he's going to be the starting quarterback, unless he, tweaks it or re-injures it somehow. But if he's out there today, they're confident, he's healthy, he's 100%, he's going to be the quarterback against Atlanta. If he's not out there today, I would lean heavily that he's not going to play against Atlanta. And then we'll start to have the conversation, what is this injury really? If he is on the verge of missing a second straight game, could he be out a third or a fourth game? When are we going to find out what this injury really is in terms of number of games that are possible for him to miss? I love the way they're handling it. I'm not knocking the way they're handling it. They should handle it this way. Look, if it was a devastating injury, if it was a, 6-week IR type of injury, we would have known that already, clearly. It's not that. We know that because they would have put him on IR. They wouldn't have taken up the roster spot. They would have put another quarterback out there or signed another quarterback to the practice squad or whatever they would have done with Josh Johnson and Sam Hartman and Mariota. But it's not that. But could it be one of those 2 to 4 week things? And they've kind of known it all along. It's in play. I think we'll find out more on that when we find out whether or not he is the quarterback speaking today and whether or not he is the quarterback out there in practice. I say if he's not out there, it's a pretty strong indication he's not playing. Sure, he could practice on tomorrow or Friday, but if he's not ready for today, what's the likelihood he's ready for tomorrow? And then you get into, don't you need him to practice more than just one day, since he's now been out for two? By the time you get to the game, it will have been 2.5 weeks almost since his last game. So I think we're going to learn a lot today about the status of the quarterback on Sunday. Keep it here. We will monitor, what's going on with respect to who's speaking, and then we will carry Quinn live when he talks from Ashburn at 12:30. We will find out at that point whether or not he's practicing. Friend of mine, my buddy of mine, Jack, texted me yesterday and said, isn't it possible that both quarterbacks practice today and we really don't know anything? Yeah, I guess that's true. Could both quarterbacks split the reps in a Wednesday practice during the regular season in preparation for their next game? It doesn't happen that often. But could it happen? Sure. If that happens, then we're not exactly sure. Although I would say if Jaden can take half the reps, he could probably take all of them. He's probably going to play unless they were just testing it in practice today. We'll see. Meantime, after the show yesterday, we got the news that Terry McLaurin was seeking a second opinion on his quad injury. John Keim, Adam Schefter had a bunch on it. Ian Rappaport had something this morning, and I will read what he put out there this morning. What'd you say, Max?
I've got some audio from Rapp yesterday, just kind of talking about it a little bit.
Give me the audio from Rapp, because he did tweet something out 50 minutes ago. I want to make sure it's the same thing. Go ahead.
Stay on the topic of star receivers dealing with annoying injuries. Terry McLaurin, the Commanders' star receiver, he's dealing with a quad injury, getting additional opinions and trying to figure out what is going on. Certainly seems like, while this is, I would say, be more considered day-to-day, certainly seemed like missing Sunday's game is at least a possibility.
So the update to that, Rappaport tweeted out within the last hour, Terry McLaurin will receive another opinion on his quad today, and he's received several, including from Dr. Williams Myers, the nation's expert in core muscle injuries. As of now, they believe it's a quad injury, but more tests coming as his status is in doubt for Sunday. I have a couple of thoughts here. I mean, I don't know what's going through your minds. I do want to know, though. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. What's your reaction to Terry McLaurin's injury? I've gotten a lot of tweets about this, and we haven't talked about it really, other than to say it's a quad injury. And Quinn on Monday, remember, was only definitive about Will Harris and about Marshawn Lattimore. Lattimore cleared concussion protocol. Harris was headed to the IR. Everybody else we would hear about on Wednesday. So in reading this tweet from Ian Rappaport, which I retweeted about, again, within the last hour, why several opinions? I wonder what the team thinks about several opinions. I'm not saying that it's the wrong thing to do for a quad injury. I'm just wondering, is it necessary that you get several opinions? There is, a team doctor, there are team trainers, and an outside opinion, second opinion. But Rappaport says he's received several, including from Dr. Williams Myers, the nation's expert in core muscle injuries. Okay, that's great. As of now, it's believed to be a quad, but more tests are coming. Status in doubt for Sunday. Another thought I had was, is this a result of missing a lot of camp, like all of camp, during his holdout, during his hold-in, during his contract negotiation? I don't know. It happened on the play in which he caught a 57-yard pass from Marcus Mariota and got shoestring tackled, as we've seen many times before, just short of the goal line. I think he scored on the play. I thought that was a ridiculous. I wonder if they, real quickly, I'll digress here for a moment. I wonder if they got back from the league that call got messed up. That would be an interesting thing to find out. I know it's from Sunday. They won the game. It was insignificant to the outcome of the game. But that was such a quick, instant review without the need of a challenge. We see that, have seen that now for the last year and a half in the NFL, and we're going to get more of those this year. They got that one wrong instantly. That one was inaccurate. His knee didn't touch the ground. It may have looked like it if you looked at it quickly. Oh, yeah, his knee's down. No, it actually didn't. There was air between his knee and grass, and his thigh didn't touch down until the ball had crossed the plane. That was clearly a touchdown. Quinn could have challenged the instant review. I think he would have won that challenge. He didn't need it and didn't need to do it. It was first and goal at the, half, yard line. But did his lack of conditioning cause the quad injury on a play in which he got tackled from behind on a 57-yard pass? I mean, if you're going to say, well, he might have been a little bit faster and wouldn't have gotten tackled, we saw him get tackled at the 1-yard line, 2-yard line, inside the 5-yard line many times last year and in other years as well. It's not that Terry isn't fast. He is fast, but for whatever reason, he gets caught from behind sometimes, and usually it's right before the goal line. So I don't know. I don't know that it had anything to do with that. But I certainly thought about that. Another thought that I had was more on the, skeptical side. Like, we know that Terry's not happy with the deal he got. That's pretty much at this point an absolute given. For those of you that didn't follow it all summer long and just kind of joined in when the season started, protracted contract negotiation. He wanted top-tier wide receiver money with, multiple years and a lot of guaranteed money. And the bottom line is when all is said and done, this deal, for all intents and purposes, is a 1-year extension. It was a very team-friendly deal, which was the only deal the team was ever going to do. They were certainly prepared to have Terry just play out the final year of his contract. And the skeptic part of me wonders, is this a serious injury, or is it not a serious injury that Terry absolutely would have moved forward with in the past? I think the former. Terry's a pro's pro. Terry's not. He was hurt by this, and you could see the reaction when the fans were chanting Terry after that play. He wants ownership, Adam Peters, to know how much he means to this fan base at every opportunity he can get, which is why he was out there for multiple practices, even though he was a holdout, or, when he was a holdout before he became a hold-in. He wants them to know, I mean, a lot more than just analytics on wide receiver and age of 30 or older. And then the other part of this is maybe the team is actually right when it comes to receivers once they turn 30 years old. And the odds of, of an increasing career are less than a decreasing career, and sometimes it's because of injury. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Terry McLaurin injured his quad. According to now multiple reports, he has sought at least a second opinion on that. And I would say, by the way, the first time I hear second opinion, typically that's not a good sign. I'm not saying it's a, definitive bad sign, but it's usually not a great sign. And Ian Rappaport's report from just within the hour says he's actually received several other opinions, including from the nation's expert in core muscle injuries, Dr. Williams Myers. They believe it's a quad injury. More tests are coming. His status in doubt for Sunday. So what's your reaction to this? 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. This team's banged up right now. And, oh, by the way, there's the whole other part, which is really the more important part of this, which is, what do they do if he is out at wide receiver? I'll talk about that when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, team980.com. There's some really interesting data, by the way, on the kickoffs so far through 3 weeks. We're going to get to that. Also, Atlanta and the fan base down there not happy with head coach Raheem Morris, and they believe that Sunday is a must-win for the head coach. More on that coming up as well. All right, Terry McLaurin's got a quad injury. We know that he is seeking at least a second opinion. Ian Rappaport says he has sought several other opinions, including from the nation's expert in core muscle injuries. What's your reaction to Terry being injured 3 weeks into the season? I mentioned this. I had a number of reactions to hearing that it was a second opinion. I really didn't have – I had a reaction when I saw that he had a quad injury. I was not assuming it to be serious. I don't know why. I guess because we didn't hear anything about it being serious the other day. I thought that, and I did via social media, we haven't talked about it yet on the phone lines, I thought that a lot of you would be really upset and, and would say, see, told you so, that if, he missed all of camp, now he's injured. My reactions are, why do you need so many opinions? I'm not being critical of it. It's more curiosity because not everybody gets multiple opinions. We do know sometimes teams aren't thrilled when guys go outside and get lots of other opinions when they've got their own medical staff. Also, is it related to missing camp? Also, skeptic in me, would this be a thing if he had gotten the contract that he had wanted? I honestly think that this is an individual, a player that you don't have to think that way about. I think more than 50% of the players in the league, especially at that position, you would certainly wonder that. And then, if he ends up being injured and missing games, this is what the team would say is the reason they don't want to give, massive overpaid contracts for culture setters and really good players, because at that position, their analytics say it's more probable that there is diminishing returns as the player gets older. And then also, what are they going to do without him if he's not able to play? What if they don't have Sunday Noah Brown and Terry McLaurin? The receivers would be Chris Moore, Deebo Samuel, Jalen Lane, and Luke McCaffrey. They would certainly elevate somebody from the practice squad, probably a Ja'Cory Brooks, maybe a Tay Martin. I think Tay Martin may have been on the 53 for the opener. I may be wrong about that. Or maybe they just added him back to the practice squad. That's what that may be what I'm thinking about. I mean, Ja'Cory Brooks looked the part in the preseason for whatever that's worth. Physically, he looked the part. His hands were really solid. And they gave him, remember, as an undrafted free agent, they gave him some real money, whereas most undrafted free agents really don't get legitimate, signing bonus money. They did give it to Ja'Cory Brooks. So they could be, you talk about limited, no matter who the quarterback is at wide receiver, if they don't have Terry and Noah Brown. For a lot of you that are big Luke McCaffrey fans, it certainly would increase his snap count, no doubt. Chris Moore, though, is the guy they feel most comfortable with. He had the second most snaps in Sunday's game against the Raiders after Terry. Terry had 35 of the 58 offensive snaps. Chris Moore had 33 of the 58 offensive snaps. All right, 301-230-0980. We've got a phone line open if you want to jump in. Just, your thoughts on Terry's quad injury. Let's start with Devon. Devon, go ahead.
What's up, Kevin? Good morning, buddy.
Good morning.
Long time no here, man. First time of the
been a
season,
while,
I believe. Yes, sir. I just feel like it's unfortunate. I'm right on point with you, Kev. It's just unfortunate. It's going to be easy to say, oh, see, that's why, he didn't train. He wasn't in training camp and things of that nature. But, I think it's more like important to see our team with, like you just mentioned, without Noah Brown and Terry. Okay, he's hurt. No matter what caused the injury, lack of, whatever. What Doc always say, who is going to be on the field? That's what I'm worried about. So we
Yeah.
We need to go trade. We can't go out there with no loot. We only got Debo. Like, if we're going to depend on the Crosby, Brooks, the Moores, like you said, it don't matter what quarterback out there. Hopefully we being proactive. You know what I'm saying? And man, call Miami. Hey, Tyreek. You know what I'm saying? We need somebody. So I take it off.
Yeah,
there,
I mean,
man.
I think that you really need Terry McLaurin out on the field. You know, to be your best, you need 17 on the field healthy. You know, whether he gets targeted a lot or not, if you end up with Chris Moore, McCaffrey, and Debo out on the field, and Jalen Lane, you know, you're playing a bit left-handed for sure. And that's just too many of your starters out. Now, they ran the football very effectively against the Raiders, and Debo is a guy that is absolutely a weapon. In fact, you know, he's been their best weapon offensively through 3 games. But, yeah, it's interesting. G, go ahead.
Yeah, hey, Sheehan, you right. If Sabah or Ian call in, you gonna hear them people talk about, I told you, shouldn't have paid him. He should have been there. Shouldn't have paid him. He wasn't worth the money. That's you gonna hear that if Sabah.
Well, no, they
Ian
would.
call in.
No. They would say, Ian would say, should have paid him right from the jump, given him the money. It's only money. It's only a couple $1 million. It wasn't a couple $1 million.
Well,
it was like 50 million, 30 million bucks. And had him from the beginning.
You said you was expecting your base to be complaining or more complaining. My thing is, like, you can get guilt walking your doggy, like Al Pacino said on Heat. Like, it's not because he wasn't there. That ain't why he hurt. Injuries happen. That's why he fought for his contract like he did, and everybody was complaining about because one bad cut and one bad hit.
Right.
Your career is derailed. So it's not because of that. And these athletes nowadays, they spend millions of dollars in taking care of their body. So it ain't because he wasn't at camp or wasn't in shape, in playing shape. And if we got to play without him, I say we better go up Home Depot and pick up somebody because our receivers have looked like people that we picked up at Home Depot because they can't get open. I think it's more Cliff Kingsbury needs to do what we did last year, control the clock, control the possession of the football, and run the football like we did against the Raiders and play conducive to who's out there on the field. That's what I think. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He get killed walking the doggy.
The receivers did get open the other day. They didn't get open against Green Bay. Green Bay and the Raiders are completely different defensively. But I'm with you. I mean,
100%.
I'm not going full doc on you and just saying I don't want to talk about players that aren't going to play in the game because, of course, we're going to talk about Terry on Wednesday. On Sunday, we don't have to talk about Terry when he's been ruled out or whenever he gets ruled out. But they're going to – if he can't go, they're going to miss him. And then the combination of him and Noah Brown being out, you are really limited at that position. And then if you have to go with Marcus Mariota instead of Jaden Daniels – I mean, I'm not, among the small group of people thinking that Marcus Mariota is as good as Jaden Daniels after Sunday's game. It's an uphill climb. You can do it, but it's an uphill climb.
That's why it's important for Kingsbury to earn his keep. He's supposed to be this offensive-minded dude. If you know Terry and Noah Brown ain't out there, and you got Mariota taking all the snaps, you play what's on the field and draw up a game plan that makes them dudes out there successful, not the ones that ain't playing. And I ain't have a problem with him going to get no second or third opinion because my father worked in the hospital for 40 years. You always go get a different opinion, especially when you had a health and training staff.
I get that, but your father wasn't. Well, your father wasn't in a facility with many medical people either.
The FBI raided the joint a couple years ago.
That was the old regime, and that was over. What was that over? Pain pills?
Either way.
No, but what was that over? Was it pain pills or was it like Xanax, anti-anxiety
I don't know,
stuff?
because everything was alleged, and all I know, everybody celebrates San Francisco 49ers being this stalwart. organization, their training staff can't keep nobody healthy neither. So you always go get a second opinion and take care of your body how you need to see fit. Man, that's it.
See ya. What was that?
Ladies, Sheehan.
See it, G. Oh yeah, it was that guy Vermillion. I don't remember the resolution to that. The DEA on October 7th, 2021, opened up an investigation into Washington football team trainer Ryan Vermillion on the distribution of prescription drugs. As a trainer and not a physician or nurse practitioner, Vermillion would not be allowed to give out prescription drugs according to federal law, nor can physicians. Yeah. I don't remember if it was painkillers or something else. For whatever reason, I think it was like anti-anxiety drugs. I think that's what it was. I could be wrong about that. Let's go to Bones. Bones, go ahead. What do you make of the Terry McLaurin
shout out
injury?
to my main man. Yeah, shout out to my man Matt. Shout out to my nephew G from the shop. Hey Kevin, man,
Is G really
man.
your nephew?
We don't have nobody to throw, huh?
Is G legitimately
No,
your nephew?
Not legitimately, but he's solely my nephew. That's my
Okay.
nephew.
Yeah.
G from the shop.
Yeah.
Hey, look, Kevin, if we don't have Terry, we're in trouble. We need somebody to throw the ball to. You know, Luke McCaffrey gonna have to step his game up. Debo gonna have to step his game up, and whoever else they got, because we need threats on the edges, man. We need threats at both ends, man. You know what I'm saying? And we're gonna have to get Ben Sinnott in there, Zach Ertz, man, and Perry. And then you talk about Noah Brown. Noah Brown ain't did nothing to be getting no shout out for, man. You know.
Yeah, but
man,
he is kind of a favorite of Jaden, and he's a big target. I think they miss Noah Brown when he's not out there. Actually, I think they feel like they miss him.
But the last time he was out there, Kevin, man, he was dropping them. You know what I mean? He couldn't bring them in. You know, so but we're gonna be in trouble, man, if we don't have nobody to throw the ball to. Hey, Kevin, man, I was at the game, man. It was a lot of energy, man. You know, I don't know about these next games because they're going to be in the evening time and at night, right? But, man, anyway, I love you, man. Thanks for taking my call.
I appreciate it, Bones, as always. By the way, the Ryan Vermillion thing, it was oxycodone. So it was painkillers, pain medication, not anti-anxiety medication. And he was yeah. They deferred prosecution. I still can't find exactly what the resolution is. If ever anybody can find it, send it to me. Because for whatever reason, part of me wants to say that Vermillion, for the most part, was exonerated. But I don't remember that for sure. Max, go ahead. Terry McLaurin's got an injured quad. He's seeking many opinions, according to Ian Rappaport. What's your reaction to Terry being hurt week 3?
Hey, Kevin. Good morning. I called about a year ago. Same situation, walking off the golf course here in Larchmont, Mamaroneck, New York. You know the golf courses.
Yes.
Anyways, in this wonderful fall weather, I called last year because, we were talking about Jaden's 84% completion percentage. And I told you he's going to regress to what he was in college, which is 60%, which is where he's pretty much at now. Now for Terry McLaurin, which is complete Ashburn syndrome for 5 years with this guy. He's insufferable. You guys failed to mention, besides the fact he held out, he obviously has a soft tissue injury, which is expected when you don't work out an entire 3 months at the level you need to work out. But besides that, have you really delved into this contract situation with him? What was the result?
It was not a good result for him and his agent.
Well, actually, it was a good result for his agent. So a contract in NFL terms, agents get 3% of the new contract, of the entire contract. He was still stuck, his agent, on the prior contract if he played out the season. Effectively, by getting an extension, which was really just a franchise tag for next year, added on to his contract this year slightly. Yeah, that new contract, the agent gets a 3% on that new negotiated contract.
We understand that.
So, but Terry basically got, in essence, a total of $12 million more by just signing this new contract.
Well, yeah, but it was nowhere near what he wanted and what they had been asking for. The agent wanted 3% of $80 million guaranteed. They got 45-ish guaranteed.
I know, Kevin, but we both knew and everyone knew that he was never going to get that.
I understand. We both understand that he should have signed that deal, and it was good for him to sign the deal. If that's what you're saying, I totally agree with you. The point being, it was very disappointing from their end. They didn't get anywhere near what they thought they were worth. But anyway, get back to the insufferable part.
Yeah, I'm going to get back to the point. But
yeah.
So the bottom line is this. The contract he got basically netted him at $12 million this year that he wouldn't have gotten otherwise.
Right.
And that $12 million, because it's a new contract, $9 million of the new contract extension goes to the agent. So to tie this back, his buddy, basically his agent, is getting an extra $9 million. He dragged it out for his friend, his agent, to get that extra money. And at the end of the day, what happens? He gets a soft tissue injury, which is expected when you don't work out, when you don't play, when you don't accelerate. So why is this fan base so accepting of individuals who at the end of the day work selfishly for themselves or for their agents? And this was a classic.
Well, this is your opinion
situation.
That he held out for his agent. That's an opinion. That's not a fact.
Well, that's what he got. But that's how else
that's not what the intent was. The intent was that to get a contract, just short of Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase's contract. That's what and then it was DK Metcalf's contract. He didn't get anywhere near that.
5 minutes. Yeah, 5 minutes of research by anyone would have said he would have never gotten that.
Of course, we talked about that all summer. But if that's what you're talking about, Max, in terms of it, I'm with you. I was here every single day saying there's no way they're going to give him that, and there's no way they should give him that. And the agent and the player, because the player's a grown-up, they need to get real about who he is as a player, his age, all the factors, and get something done and take it, because he would never get anywhere near this a year from now. This was his last opportunity to get any kind of guaranteed money. So I'm happy for him that he got some guaranteed money, but in terms of the delusion around what he was worth and the way it was handled, I think it was handled very poorly by them. Now, whether or not that led to this injury, that's your opinion. I don't know if that's what led to this injury, but I do think, and I've had to deal with the fans all along that have thought he's the greatest thing to ever happen to this organization, and he's definitely an elite wide receiver. No, he isn't. He's never been. And I'm old enough to remember Gary Clark and Art Monk. All due respect to Terry McLaurin, we've had true championship elite receivers in this organization, and he's well below those. Now, he's in that next tier with Santana. He's in that next group. But look, when you've had nothing for as long as this fan base has had nothing, and you've been abused the way this fan base has been abused, Terry was a bright light because of the way he handled himself and because he was a very good player. But you don't pay for past in this league. You pay for what somebody's going to give you moving forward.
And that's a life lesson in any profession.
Of course.
But moving forward, and when you want to have this conversation, maybe in 2 weeks or 4 weeks, I'll call back in. But we need to really understand this Jaden situation, because to me, this guy has been playing sort of, off the seat of his pants a little bit here. And yes, he had a good season last year.
No, he had a great season last year. He had a great season last year.
He's not the darling anymore on EPA, on
two games,
including
playing maybe the best defense in the NFL. You're really not, Max. You're fairly bright. I know you're fairly bright. You're not going to go down the path where you tell me that Jaden's overrated, are you? That he's really not that good.
We're going to talk about it in 2 to 4 weeks. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But
once he's healthy and starts playing, please call back. What was your description of the season last year? He had an okay season. Good season.
When you beat 4 winning teams and Detroit lost their starting quarterback with a broken arm on the second play. And
Who did?
Tampa Bay lost their secondary and their safety, who was the quarterback of their defense. A week before that game,
Detroit didn't lose their
I will
quarterback
tell
on the
you-
second play. Jared Goff played that whole
cornerback.
game.
The cornerback.
Oh, the corner.
Cornerback.
Yeah.
He broke his arm second play of the game.
Yeah.
And they had lost their cornerback, their other starting cornerback.
Their
the week before
defense
against
was in
the Vikings.
shambles, no doubt. So
And
was Tampa's
Tampa Bay
to a
lost
certain
the
degree. You're right.
Quarterback of their defense, their safety, the quarterback of their defense, their safety, a week prior to our game as well.
How do you account for
listen.
playing against the best defense in the NFL late December and bringing them back from 20 21 to 10 down or whatever it was?
CJ Gardner got kicked out of that game, and that game changed as soon as he left that game. Go back and look at that film.
Because Gardner Johnson left the game. That's why it changed? Come on.
Well, he's the one.
Come on.
He's the one.
Shaden
that
strapped the
defense
team
off
to
the
his
Eagles.
back in that game. He threw 5 touchdown passes. He let him down the field multiple times with the game on the line.
Kevin.
Come on. Stop.
All
right, I got to move on.
Kevin.
Max, thanks for the call. Play some good golf today at, Wingfoot or wherever you are. Colby, finish it up for us. Go ahead, quickly.
It's kind of disappointing 3 games into the season, and we have to listen to people who are doubting our quarterback who was 1 game away from the Super Bowl last season.
Yeah.
It's after injury. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, any GM who would soft bench the rookie of the year 2 games in the season
Here we go with this
be ran out of the league.
I love soft bench.
It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating listening to some of these calls. And what I want to say, Kevin, is you got a lot of listeners. A certain percentage are callers. So I would say that there are some callers like Sabah and Max who probably wanted another quarterback drafted or wanted to keep Sam Howell or something like that, who are going to complain. But let's get back on track. With Terry, I agree with you on the things that you mentioned before that you took calls. One thing that I will say is I question after his contract negotiation whether he's just on bad terms with the team and the organization. And
it's certainly in my mind. Yes. They were hurt by the entire process, no doubt, and angry.
So, with everything you said, I would add on to that. Maybe he just doesn't trust them and wants to go outside of the organization at this point to seek other, what other doctors have to say. But that's all I had.
That ain't going to happen. They ended up paying him and giving him some guaranteed money when they did not have to do that because they're in this window and they wanted him. They liked Terry. That was the point all along.
He's
Appreciate the call.
Quarterback.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. The point all along, all summer long was they don't have to do this, people. There's nothing that says someone entering their final year of a contract, you have to extend them. They did it because they like the player and because the player's a good player. They like him personally and he's a good player. There's no doubt that the process over the summer was contentious and probably left some ill feelings on both ends. But that's business. That's business. You got to put that behind you. That deal's done. And for Terry, he has a chance by playing exceptionally well to keep getting the rest of this deal, even though it isn't guaranteed beyond next season. He could still, with incentives and all of that stuff, earn $96 million over that 3-year contract extension over the next 4 seasons if he plays at a high level. So I don't believe that he's taking some sort of, hurt out on the team right now. I don't believe that at all. I honestly don't. I think that there was definitely some hurt and frustration and anger. I think there's still some of that. But he's a pro, and there is a big prize at the end of this thing if he can go play at a high level for the next several years. And by the way, they need him to play at a high level this year. Need that. All right. Santana Moss joined me earlier this week on my podcast to reminisce about 20 years ago this week, the Monday Night Miracle. He's got some great stories, including a part of the end of that game against the Cowboys that I had never heard before. You'll hear it next.
All right, happy Wednesday, everybody. It is September 23rd. Here's what's happening. Oklahoma State head coach Mike Gundy was let go yesterday after more than 20 years in his position. The firing comes after Oklahoma State's first loss to Tulsa since 1951, and the writing was already on the wall prior to the season with a winless season in the Big 12 and a 52-0 loss to Colorado at home. The Guardians, they caught the Detroit Tigers in the race to win the AL Central after Detroit's star pitcher Tarek Skubal collapsed and gave up 3 runs in the 6th inning with a 2-0 lead. The Guardians are 9-1 in their last 10 games, and the Tigers sliding right now. They are 1-9 in their last 10. Now they are tied for the division lead with only a few games to go left in this season. The Nats, they fall to the Braves by a score of 3-2. Brad Lord goes 6 innings, giving up 4 hits and 2 earned runs, both of which solo homers. The boys unable to light up the offense outside of a James Wood solo home run. They will take on the Braves one final time this season before turning their attention to the Chicago White Sox. First pitch today at 12:15. Nats on deck with Charlie and Dave at 11:45 on The Fan. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Den's office throughout all of football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
From Cargo J writes, Kevin, multiple opinions sounds serious, don't you think? Question mark. Yeah, I said that seeking a second opinion on a quad injury is a bit of a red flag. Seeking multiple opinions, sure. Yes. I mean, the reporting is his status is in doubt. We'll learn more from Quinn today, and we're going to carry Dan Quinn's press conference before practice begins at 12:30. But yeah, this doesn't sound great. We'll know more in about an hour and a half. You'll hear the Santana Moss conversation in about 30 minutes. But joining me right now is Josh Kendall. Josh covers the Atlanta Falcons for The Athletic, as I've said many times. I am a subscriber to The Athletic. You should be as well. You can follow Josh on X at Josh The Athletic. Josh, I think this is a very dangerous game from our standpoint. I think the league proves, every year it's week to week. We saw the Browns beat the Packers. We saw the Giants bounce back against the Cowboys and then look terrible. How do you think Atlanta responds to getting shut out 30-0?
I wish I could tell you, but absolutely, as the opponent coming in here,
do we have Josh? I hear. Okay, I can kind of hear him.
Hang on, let's see if I can get a.
Max, you want to try to reestablish? Let me hear you. Sorry, Josh, go ahead. Yeah, put him on hold and let's get a better connection with Josh. The Falcons, as I mentioned, lost 30-0 to the Panthers. I mean, the Panthers were 0-2, hadn't shown any sign of life. I mean, they had that week 2 comeback against the Cardinals, but they were truly getting their, behinds kicked, and then they recovered an onside kick, which is pretty rare in the game, and had a chance to win at the end. But 30-0 sounds awful. And it probably was awful. Do we have Josh back? All right, Josh, I'm sorry. So bottom line is I kind of think, following the NFL as a fan, this is the kind of game where a team looks terrible and ends up looking like a completely different team the following week. What do you think?
I don't know. I think that as the opponent, you've got to assume that you're stepping into a hornet's nest and a team that's super motivated. But that loss to Carolina, as you've outlined just broadly, was as bad a professional loss as I've seen personally. That Carolina's not a good football team. Atlanta was coming off of a high, thought it had turned the corner, and looked offensively like they didn't know how to play. So I don't have any real grasp of how this team, with a second-year quarterback making his 7th start, that just fired its wide receivers coach, that has a head coach who still hasn't, proven himself as a head coach. I don't know how this team is going to respond. Absolutely, coming out with their hair on fire and playing well is a possibility, but there are other possibilities too.
All right, so we most didn't see the game. I watched the condensed version. It was the worst Penix Jr. has looked by far. Are there concerns about him?
If there are, they are not saying them, and they will probably never admit them. From the moment that they benched Kirk Cousins, week 16, between week 15 and 16 last year, they said Michael Penix is our guy, and he's our guy of the future. We love this guy. We've loved this guy since we worked him out at the University of Washington. He's our guy. Just wait and see. And they have continued to say that they've been nothing but confirmed in all their love for him and everything that they've seen. But he's 2-4 as a starter, and it looked really, really bad last week. And he's completing 58% of his passes, which is what he completed last year, which is not going to be good enough. I'm not saying Michael Penix is the problem, because I see all of the positive qualities that they highlight in Michael Penix. I see them as well. You can absolutely see it. And this guy could end up being this team's quarterback, and a really good one, for 5, 6, 7 years. That's on the table. But there may be, he's got to prove that he doesn't have and this offense has got to prove that they don't have a fatal flaw, which is they just can't complete enough passes. They can't get on the same page and throw accurate enough passes to complete enough passes to be a functioning offense.
So So I'll let you in on something that all of my listeners know. I'm kind of a Kirk guy. I was a Kirk guy when he was here. I have followed his career in Minnesota. I watched, a lot of the games last year. He obviously got hurt. I think it was in that New Orleans game on the road because he was a different quarterback after that. The locker room will tell the tale. Where is the locker room on the quarterback situation right now?
For now, they're with Penix, and I think that they've been with Penix since he became a guy, and I think it was since Steve. That gets put to the test right now. The Falcons opened themselves up to a controversy, to an issue when they decided to keep Cousins around.
Yeah.
So now they have it. They have said, Raheem Morris said Sunday, I asked him, will Kirk be competing for the starting job this week? Raheem said no. So this is the Michael Penix show. They're not, and they just signed a kicker on Tuesday to compete with their kicker who missed 2 kicks last week because, as Raheem said, you've got to have competition. So I'm not sure why you not have a competition right now at the quarterback position other than you have pushed all your chips into Michael Penix's basket and you're living and dying with him.
Talking to Josh Kendall, covers the Falcons for The Athletic. This is a better – well, let's stick with the offense for a moment because maybe Gibbs and Montgomery would be the better pairing at the running back position, but Algier and Bijan are close. They ran the football so well against that Minnesota defense in week 2. What happened last week?
Well, they ran it. They could barely run it in week 1, and they were stunned. They were surprised, and they said they challenged their offensive line, and the offensive line came out and responded really well against Minnesota, and they absolutely did dominate with the run game against Minnesota. And so I don't know if the offensive line decided that was enough. 1 week was enough. That's plenty. And so, we're just going to have another dud game, or if it was a game planning issue. I mean, to be frank, I'm not smart enough to dissect that, sitting in the press box. I couldn't tell you, but I would expect them to go back to a more Minnesota-like game plan. I would expect them to say, we're going to take a lot off this quarterback's plate right now, and we're going to put a lot of pressure on this offensive line, and we're going to give the ball to 7 and 25 and hope that settles us down offensively.
What about defense? It looks revamped. It looks a lot better. Got a little bit better as the season went along last year because it was not a good defense for much of the year. What does Washington face in Atlanta's defense this week?
A better unit than a year ago. The Commanders faced a defense that didn't have many answers toward the end of last year and didn't have any confidence. This group is different. This group has a lot more confidence and has some answers. They didn't play poorly against the Panthers. They didn't play great. Possibility. Mike Penix threw a pick 6, and it just rolled against them. So
yeah.
There will be some pass rush. There will be a team that adjusts and has a chance. Gives the Falcons a fight.
Yeah, we're just having some issues with Josh's phone. So if you want to try to reestablish again, Max, one more time, and if we can't get it right, we're good. We got a lot of the information that we need from Josh. Look, it comes down to, when you draft a quarterback that high, you're not going to wait around forever. I really think that the Falcons did themselves. You should always be thinking about quarterback, especially when you've got an older quarterback. But they went out and paid Kirk a hell of a lot of money in free agency. And then they ended up drafting a quarterback that was always going to be there lurking if anything went wrong. Kirk got, injured a little bit during the season last year. His performance went downhill, and they took that opportunity to get Penix into the lineup when they were still very much in a playoff race. They had a 3-game lead at one point over Tampa last year, and they had swept Tampa. Do we have him back? Okay, sorry about that, Josh. Your phone just keeps breaking up, but I appreciate
my fault.
you.
Sorry, guys.
No, it's all right. I appreciate you giving the time. But I was just saying, going back to the drafting of Michael Penix Jr., a month and a half after giving Kirk all of that money, what's the thought on that today?
The thought on that 3 weeks ago was great. We told you so, and I think the thought in Atlanta right now is still we told you so. I think that their belief in Michael Penix is legitimate. I think that they are very publicly confident, and I think that they legitimately feel that. I don't think that they're faking that. They still believe that they've got their quarterback of the future, and so they believe that no amount of resources was too much to invest to assure that outcome, whether it ended up being Kirk or Michael Penix. So they would still argue that they believe they made the right decision. I think that you can certainly make an argument that it's not going to be the right decision, or it hasn't been the right decision, or it wasn't the right decision, however we want to couch it. But they are, they're a couple of weeks away from having a real mess at quarterback.
That's the problem, right? When you have a backup like that's making that much money, you decided not to move him during the offseason, and you're going with the rookie. There's little patience, and that's unfortunate because Penix does have talent, and like you said, he's about to make his 7th or 8th start this particular week. I mean, we've seen veteran quarterbacks, resuscitate their careers in their 30s. It's just so incredibly unrealistic to expect a Jaden Daniels kind of rookie season out of most of these young quarterbacks. Is Raheem in trouble if they don't win more than they lose this year?
Depends on how close it is. If they are 8 and 9, I don't think he's in significant trouble. No, because 8 and 9 is what this team has been for basically the last decade. So I think that they can survive that. If they're 5 and 12, yeah, he's in trouble.
All right. Lastly, by the way, so the answer to getting beat 30-0 is letting the wide receivers coach go. Ike was a part of this staff here with the Shanahans, with Raheem, back in the early 2010s. Did that satisfy anybody?
No, not at all. I mean, I think if anything, that just if you were making if they were making the move to sort of shut up the critics, I think they only emboldened the critics, because the critics all said that's a dumb reaction to a terrible overall offensive performance. So you would hope that that's not why they made the move. You would hope that they made the move because they have correctly diagnosed the fact that the reason that Michael Penix and the wide receivers looked like they were playing a different game on Sunday was the fault of the wide receivers, and we have to get that fixed. And once we get that fixed, everything will be fine. If that turns out to, then if
yeah. All right, Josh is breaking up again. We'll let him go, but thanks, Josh, if you can hear me. Appreciate the time. It's interesting, Max. They got a good receiving core. Drake London is a big target. Darnell Mooney had a career year. Drake London had a career year last year. Kyle Pitts was kind of the question mark, after getting drafted so high. There was a lot of question about his work ethic, about his blocking ability. They've got talent. I mean, every team's got talent, but they actually have talent at the skill position players offensively. And as Josh said, defensively, they're capable. So it comes down to the quarterback, as it often does. And Penix Jr. had a rough game last week, really, truly his worst game. I think the other concern would be what he said about the completion percentage, going back to his starts, last year as well. He's basically, somewhere in the low to mid 50s completion percentage wise right now in his starts. That's not going to be good enough. You got to be in the league now. You got to be in the, low to mid 60s, pretty much consistently to have an offense that can be consistent and sustain drives, et cetera. And man, he's got some targets there, including his backs, and with Zach Robinson, the OC who came from Sean McVay's squad in LA, There's a lot of Shanahan elements to this offense, a lot of Sean McVay elements to this offense. Now, they didn't seem to do it a lot last year early with the play action, the under center stuff, but I think they've done more of it with Penix Jr. But you got to complete a higher percentage when you're in that kind of an offense, and you can run the football. You got to be at a higher percentage. And that's probably the most important part of what he said. It's not the two picks and the two bad picks. When you're at a completion percentage in the mid 50s and you've got the running game that you have with Bijan and with Tyler Algier, that is not a good early sign. I'm a Penix Jr. guy. I loved him coming out. I thought and still think he's got a chance to be a really, really good NFL quarterback. It's so early, but you got to get that completion percentage up. And wouldn't surprise me if they try to get him some easy stuff early in that game. They will try to run the football. And Washington's improvement through 3 games compared to last year in the run defense area is meaningful. Very meaningful. I understand the Giants and the Raiders were 2 of the 3 opponents. I don't think they did a terrible job against the run in the Green Bay game. But that, Atlanta's going to want to run the football. They're going to want to come out. They're going to want to run the football. They did it against a very good Minnesota defense in that game. Bijan went for 143. Tyler Algier, 16 for 76. They had 218 yards rushing against that Viking defense. What happened on Sunday is because of the turnovers, they got behind. They tried to chase it through the air, so they got away from the run game. But they're going to try to run the football, and this will be, for sure, among the 4 games Washington's played so far, this will be the biggest test run game-wise. Now, I would think if they have any doubts about whether or not they can stop the run with 7 in the box, they'll make Penix beat them and load the box to stop those 2 backs. You can't let them get going early. And I would imagine that's number 1 on the defensive game plan. Stop the run Sunday. Make Penix Jr., who's dealing with some stuff right now for sure after that game, make him beat you. All right. As I said 20 minutes ago, you'll hear Santana Moss and I reminisce about 20 years ago this week, the Monday Night Miracle. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com.
Hanging in, going deep, and a pass is caught for a touchdown by Santana Moss. And the Washington Redskins finally get into the end zone in 2005. From the 30, Brunell going deep for Moss again. He makes the catch, and Santana Moss for a touchdown. Wow. And again, it's Glenn and Williams on the coverage. He beats the same two guys.
Unbelievable. He just outran him, and Mark Brunell got it out there.
Al Michaels, John Madden on Monday Night Football 20 years ago this week, the Monday Night Miracle. Simply put, one of the most shocking endings to a Redskins game in franchise history, and certainly in terms of the shock value, right up there at the top of the list of some of the most memorable Skins-Cowboys games in history. 20 years has passed since that night. And I had Santana Moss on to reminisce about that night on my podcast earlier this week. And what was funny about it is when we started to talk about that before we started to talk with the podcast recording, I said, do you know what this week is in terms of a 20-year anniversary? And he had no idea. And that's where we kicked it off.
Yeah, I had no clue. So, I mean, but just you asking me kind of gave me that kind of, maybe it's something dealing with me. So I just luckily, said that date.
All right, let's go back 20 years ago. Week 2, Dallas on Monday Night Football. Remember the opener that year, that this was Joe Gibbs's second season. This was your first season in Washington. We had the Lavernius Coles season, and then, he didn't want to be here, and Clinton takes credit for the trade that brought you here. It was a low-scoring defensive game in the opener against the Bears. Ramsey, went out. Brunell came in. I think Gibbs wanted Brunell from the beginning. Do you remember it that way? Do you remember kind of Joe wanting, a reason to put Brunell in the game?
I had no clue. Remember, I was fresh. I was like a fish out of water. I had no clue what was going on around me.
Right. Okay. So we get to Dallas. You guys haven't scored a touchdown in the first 7 quarters of the season, even though you beat the Bears. It was 3 field goals. And you're getting beat 13-0. And Santana, I swear to you, as a fan watching this game, most people, except for the diehards, turn this thing off. It was an ugly game. We couldn't score. Dallas was up 13-0. What are your memories of that night before lightning struck in the final 4 minutes of the game?
Just what you said, man. It was an ugly game, and that's why one of the reasons why it took me so long to say this was one of my favorite games. And I had to be reminded by the fan base that, hey, this is what happens when we play Dallas. This is why this game is so special. So, being a guy that had already played 4 years in New York, and this was my first time being a part of this rivalry, I had no clue why the game was so special to this fan base. So it took me a while. But after I made those 2 scores, and probably some weeks later, I had no clue, man. But I'm glad that I was a part of that, and I'm glad I was the guy that did it, because that was like my introduction. That was like, here you go. That was like my welcome to DC moment, and I couldn't be more thankful.
It was a 4th and 15 with just under 4 minutes to go, down 13-0 when Mark Brunell threw the first touchdown pass to you. 4th and 15. You guys on that drive had overcome a 3rd and 27. Brunell ran, and on 4th and 2, he found James Thrash for a completion. It's 4th and 15. Still seems like there's no prayer. What do you remember about that first touchdown?
Well, the first touchdown came, I was on the sideline kind of pouting, and CP came over to me, like, asking me, what's wrong. And, normally that's how we do. When the game is about over, we kind of start getting our mindset for the flight and what we got to do next week. And CP like, what's wrong, bro? And I'm like, what you mean what's wrong? And that's like my first initial thought to him, and that's what came out. And I'm like, bro, I ran all these plays on Friday that I told him that I liked. that I want to run against Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn was a teammate of mine with the Jets, and I thought the world of him. And to be honest with you, Aaron Glenn was the reason that I thought that my game was where it was at, because he kind of followed me around my rookie season in practice, like, hey, I'm gonna get you right, and you're gonna get me right. And so I thought the world of Aaron Glenn. But I remember watching him go up against Marvin Harrison and all these other guys in our division in the AFC East. So I gave Coach all these plays, like, Coach, I want to run this. I can run every route that I'm giving you and more, but I like these routes against Aaron Glenn. And we get to that point of the game, and I hadn't ran one yet. And I also probably only had 1 or 2 catches in that game. So when I tell CP that, I'm pissed off that I didn't get a chance to do all these routes that we practiced that Friday, CP comes back with Coach Gibbs, and Coach Gibbs' first initial word to me was like, hey, you want to run Dino? And I'm like, I looked at the clock, and I'm like, sure, Coach, I'll run Dino. Like, I didn't want to give him my, the kiss, but I was pissed off. So I'm like, yeah, Coach, of course I want to run Dino. And that's all I remember. I remember him saying, okay, we're going to do it if we get the ball back. And that was the first route. That was the first touchdown. And after that, it was like, oh, man, I guess he looked at it was like, this is why this guy pissed off. He knows he can do this. And then I come back to the sideline, and he tells me, great job, but we get the ball back, we going at him again. Rest was history.
So I'm learning something here for the first time, and I think a lot of people are learning it for the first time too. Clinton, who takes credit for bringing you to Washington, to going to Gibbs and saying, well, let's just go get Santana. If Lavernius Scholes wants out of here, let's go get Santana Moss. So that trade happens, and you're telling me in one of the most memorable Redskins-Cowboys games of all time, the game is over, you're over there, they haven't run the play that you – first of all, let me back up. Would you typically on a Thursday or a Friday go to the coach, go to the OC, and say, hey, these are the ones I like?
Man, you know what? To be honest with you, that was my first experience of really being their kind of, I guess you could say, quote unquote, go-to guy.
Right.
That they started asking me, do I like these routes? And that was kind of like alarming to me as a guy, like, where I just came from, they care less what I like. But they gave me, the ball whenever the ball come. And, and I'm being the guy who I was, I made the play. So when I got that kind of rapport with them after that first week, I just, that week leading up into that game, they asked me, hey, what routes do you like? And I just say, hey, here's the list of routes I want. You know what I mean? And so that's what I had with that particular coaching staff. And it worked tremendously for me, because if you saw that year, it was one of my best years.
Oh, yeah.
And I was mad that after that season that we didn't have that same report, because it's like now we get a different offense in the next year, and they don't ask me those questions no more.
The other thing Clinton for that season takes credit for, and I think you've confirmed this with me before, is that Joe and company wanted in Vinny, they wanted to take Kellen Winslow, and Clinton,
and he asked them to get Sean.
Yeah, Clinton said you should take Sean Taylor, and Gibbs said, well, we really want offense, and Clinton said, well, if you want offense, take Sean Taylor. That was his answer. Like, if you want the football and then take Sean Taylor. And of course, that was Sean Taylor's rookie season.
I kid you not, for the fans that know.
Yeah.
I kid you not, for the fans that know all the other stuff that Clinton was about with the little funny costumes and stuff of that nature, and just the way he did things.
Yeah.
Clinton had a way about going and talking to. And when I say adults, I always feel like I look at my coaches as like, that's like your mom and your dad. Like you don't go to talk to them like you would talk to your friends or your siblings.
Right.
But Clinton had a way of talking to the ownership, to the head coach, better than any other player I ever been around. He always got his way with them. So yes, I hate to say it, but he was a guy that could go talk to anybody and tell you what he thought or what he felt should happen.
By the way, it didn't really work with Jim Zorn, though, did it?
Not at all. I think, and much as I like his Jim, Clinton didn't like Zorn the way same I liked him, and I think it rubbed him wrong that Clinton was one of those guys that would just say what was on his mind.
Right. All right. So the first one on 4th and 15 makes it 13-7. We get the ball back, under 3 to go, or just about 2.5 minutes to go at your own 30, 1st and 10. And so the play call comes in again, and it's the same play?
So it's not the same play. It's still a post.
Yeah.
But this time it's just a beeline post. And he was like, it was crazy because I remember that play when we called the second one, they lined me up on the left side of the field. And I'm not sure if we brought the play in wrong or it was just, said out the huddle. So we called a timeout, if I'm not mistaken. And then we changed it. We flipped to the right side because coach wanted to make sure I got on that side with Roy Williams and Aaron Glenn. And when I got on that side, I just looked at the coverage and I'm like, wow, this guy Roy Williams is still sitting. He's not high enough. He's sitting squatting at I'm thinking almost 16 to 20 yards deep, and I'm watching where him and Aaron kind of shading each other, and I'm like, this is cover 4 again. They're sitting in cover 4. Roy is playing for something underneath. So I kind of made my route. Instead of running a regular post attacking Aaron, I kind of attacked in the middle between both of them. So when I put that foot in the ground, when I take my initial 2 steps towards that post, I should be able to get behind Roy a little quicker. And, man, thank God that you got an old veteran, that just know how to throw the ball. Mark Brunell threw the ball before I put my foot in the ground. And when I looked up, by the time I looked up, the ball was already coming down.
Yeah, and it's kind of an over-the-shoulder catch on that one. It was perfectly thrown, right?
Yes, perfectly thrown.
And I'm watching the play right now. Brunell's got time. He steps up in the pocket, and there it is. And when it lands in your hands, I mean, it was like, sports are so great because, when you least expect it, but it's still shocking. That is truly one of the more shocking couple of minutes of football for this franchise I have ever watched. It's not over yet. You're up 14-13, but tell me, after you go into the end zone, you're coming back to the sideline, what went on at that point? Gibbs is like, what took me so long?
Everybody was just ecstatic, man. They was looking at me like, oh, you know what? This is what we got in this guy with number 89 on. And it was crazy to see the reaction from my teammates because all of them have respect of you from wherever they seen you play at, from your U days, from my days with the Jets, and even with some of the things that I was doing up to that point. But the playmaking, when you're making plays like that in crucial moments of games, you kind of get a different look from your teammates. You get a different stare, like that, almost like, oh, he's that guy. And you can see that from everybody. Like, their eyes was big. They was hitting me so hard on my head. And I'm just one of those nonchalant guys like, man, I was happy, but I was still at the same point like, damn, we waited all this time to do this.
Right.
And CP and Sean was the guys that I really, we just had a way of connecting and speaking to each other without even saying anything. And when CP hit me, like I told him, and then Sean came to me and said, I'm going to get this ball back. And that's when I knew, like, okay, we got that same kind of swag that we had at UM. Even though Sean didn't play with me and CP, we speak the same language. And Sean kind of took that as, now it's my time to go out here and make a play so I can make sure that these guys don't score this next time out.
Yeah, remember he blew up Patrick Creighton over the middle.
Yeah.
And got the stop. I'm looking at the play-by-play of the game. This part I guess I don't remember. You guys actually got the ball back after Sean crushed Patrick Creighton, and then Walt Harris had a big play on Terry Glenn. And you got the ball back. They had timeouts left, and Clinton ran 3 times, and then you guys punted, and they had one last opportunity, but with no timeouts left and deep in their own territory, and the rest is history. So, over the years, like, you mentioned, like, you didn't know what Dallas, Washington meant going in. You were new, clearly. What has that game meant to you, over the last 20 years?
Are you kidding me? It meant my whole career. Honestly, like, I don't know if it was like something that ignited my performances for the future with those guys, but it seemed like every Dallas game, no matter what coaching staff was here, if they wasn't giving me the ball the way I wanted the game before or the week before, they found a way to involve me in the game plan come Dallas week. So it was just like one of those things to where sometimes as a player, I get mad thinking about it. Like, you mean to tell me we're going to wait the Dallas week to get me off instead of just giving me the ball every week like this?
Yeah.
But it meant the world to me, man. I think when you look back at my career here, what better way to start your career here, with this franchise, and to have that kind of effect against that team, but also have that effect that I had with, the fan base, knowing that you can count on 89. And it wasn't something that just happened when I played Dallas, but they knew that when we played those guys, it was going to probably, my play was going to rise because the coaching staff was going to make sure they found a way to get me the ball.
I'll tell you what, seriously, it's one of those nights as a fan of this team. Like, I remember exactly where I was. I remember exactly never thought about turning the game off. I was never one of those people that gave up. All right, 13-0, it's 2 scores. It didn't seem very likely. But, like, it was one of those games when it was over, it was so thrilling, it was, like, almost impossible to go to sleep. It was actually my second year in radio, and I was doing this kind of post game of the Skins games for 980. But that because it was a Monday night game, they didn't have the post game show on. So I was home watching the game, and I'll never forget it. You had so many memorable games, but nothing compares to that. Like, I do think of that Jacksonville catch in overtime that you took, the big catch from Jason, who threw that ball to you to beat the Saints, that year. But, I'm looking at that season, which ended up being a playoff season, as we know.
Yeah.
The next 3 games after that Dallas game, you got targeted 12, 13, and 14 times. So it was a bit different after that game.
Yeah, it was a huge difference, man. And that's why I say, as a player, you don't you're in the moment, so you're not really thinking about it until you think about it. And when I reflect all the time, I'm like, wow, that season, I was tearing it up when it comes to 100-yard games, like no other season in my career, because now this new team that I'm on is like, feed 89 the ball, feed whatever you do, feed 89 the ball. But not just feed me the ball. It was Mark Brunell most of the time, because Mark was a guy, even when I wasn't in the progression, he would come find me, and he would tell me, 89, leaving the huddle, I love the fact of playing with older quarterbacks, because it's the same thing that I had against Vinny Testaverde in New York.
Yeah.
When I would leave the huddle, after making a couple of plays with these guys, they would just know to say, hey, stay with me backside. I might come to you. So when you have that kind of confidence in your player as a quarterback, I can just imagine what they was going through when they say, hey, man, and when in doubt, I'm throwing to the guy who's going to get me, who's going to catch this ball and do something with it. And that's what Mark and Vinny would do with me. So I remember that year, man, Mark I would be backside, even against that 2006 game when we played Jacksonville.
Yeah.
That play I ran early in the first half. Mark asked me early in the first half, were you open? I said, of course. But the coverage was kind of like man that time. The second time he threw it to me that I scored on it, I wasn't open. But Mark just knew, man, Tanner's going to go up and try to make an attempt for this ball, so I'm going to throw it to him. So it's one of those things, man, when the quarterback feels you're going to make him right, he's going to always find you.
Santana Moss, everybody. What a career here in Washington. He went into the Ring of Fame just a few weeks ago during the opener against the Giants. A welcome entrant into that Ring of Fame, and deserving as well. Santana Moss, third on the reception list franchise all-time, behind 2 Hall of Famers in Art Monk and Charlie Taylor. Reception yards, he is 4th all-time, trailing Monk, Taylor, and Gary Clark. I've referenced this list of, the really good receivers in franchise history, of which you are one of them, a lot over the last, few months during the Terry McLaurin contract, discussions, because Terry's, moving up quickly on this list. But what a player, what a career here. And what a memory you provided. Truly one of the most memorable, regular season games in franchise history. I really appreciate you doing this. Hope you're well, and let's talk soon.
No doubt, man. One of the things about me when it comes to all that, I don't play the game for it, and I feel that that's the mindset we're supposed to have. But you hear a lot of guys that think differently. They like, look, I play for the Pro Bowls, I play for the Hall of Fames. I played because I was gifted enough to play this game, and it was a privilege to me to play. But at the same time, you go out there and say, I just want to be able to hold myself accountable and make sure my teammates know that when in doubt, this guy who's out here, making these plays are going to be somebody that we can always trust in. So to have that career, to have the accolades afterwards, man, it's always a blessing. But I just enjoy knowing that I had that effect, and I was a guy that the fan base look at the way they look at now.
Well, and for those of us that just know you even a little bit, you've been a total class act since the moment you arrived 20 years ago, and I think people appreciate that about you as well. Hope you're well. We'll do this again soon. Thanks for this.
Always, man. Thank you.
Santana Moss reminiscing about that game 20 years ago this week. All right. There is an interesting connection between one of our regular callers and the doctor that Terry McLaurin sought an opinion on as it relates to perhaps his quad injury. That caller has weighed in, and I'm going to share that information with you when we come back. Ben Standig will join us at 12 from the park. Dan Quinn scheduled to talk next hour. We will carry that live. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. All of our NFL talk here on the show is presented by Paramount Plus. Sylvester Stallone is back in the original hit series Tulsa King. This season, Dwight faces his most dangerous adversaries yet, forcing him to fight for everything he's built and to protect his empire. Watch the new season of Tulsa King, now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus.
All right. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Here is what's happening. We start off with Oklahoma State head coach Mike Gundy. He was let go yesterday after more than 20 years in his position. The firing comes after Oklahoma State's first loss to Tulsa since 1951, and the writing was already on the wall prior to the season after a winless Big 12 conference record and a 52-0 loss to Colorado to close out their season. The Guardians, they caught the Detroit Tigers in the race to win the AL Central after Detroit's starting pitcher Tarek Skubal collapsed and gave up 3 runs in the 6th inning with a 2-0 lead. The Guardians playing hot right now. They are 9-1 in their last 10 games, and the Tigers sliding currently as they are 1-9 in their last 10. Now, the two teams are tied for the AL Central lead with just a few games left to go in the season, by the way. The Nats, they fall to the Braves by a score of 3-2. Brad Lord goes 6 innings, giving up 4 hits and 2 earned runs, both of which solo home runs. The boys in blue and white unable to get to light up the offense outside of a James Woods solo home run. They will take on the Braves one final time this season before turning their attention to the Chicago White Sox. First pitch at 12:15 on 106.7 The Fan, and Nats on deck with Charlie and Dave right now at 11:45 on The Fan. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Denton's office throughout all of football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us, and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
This segment of the show is brought to you by IHOP, introducing the IHOP value menu, where all your breakfast faves are just $6 each every day. Where else can you get a big, filling, sit-down breakfast for only $6? Go to your Happy Plates with the $6 IHOP value menu, available every day at IHOP. At IHOP, $7 in some locations. Still, pretty good deal for, a big stack with some eggs and other protein. All right. So during the show, Sabah sent me a direct message, and I'm going to read it to you. This is about the Terry McLaurin injury. We will find out more. Ben's going to join us at 12. Dan Quinn set to speak to the media at around 12:30, where I'm sure we're going to hear a lot about Jaden and Terry. Sabah writes, Kevin, William Myers. Well, let me back up. Ian Rappaport's report earlier this morning was that Terry, had sought out multiple opinions, several, in fact, including from Dr. Williams Myers, the nation's expert in core muscle injuries. So Sabah wrote and said, Kevin, William Myers is who trained me during my surgical residency. Actually signed my degree as he was the program director. He is the expert on sports hernias. I probably did about 20 of those surgeries with him, usually on NHL and MLB players in Boston at that time. She went to the University of Massachusetts for med school. She writes, it was a real easy and quick procedure, but likely will require at least 6 weeks before going back to play football. And then she attached, I guess, some sort of resume from Dr. William Myers, formerly the chairman of surgery at the University of Massachusetts, University of Mass, Worcester, is a renowned expert on core muscle injuries, often called sports hernias. I'm having a difficult time reading some of this stuff. But basically, she's saying, I was at UMass doing my surgical residency. He showed up. I did a bunch of surgeries with him. This is, if he sought out William Myers, very likely a sports hernia injury, which is 6 weeks before going back to playing football. Okay? Look, I think it's certainly the idea that he is seeking many different opinions tells you that it is something of significance here. We went from should have been a touchdown to him not coming back into the game, it being called a quad injury, not really knowing anything about it because the team doesn't tell you anything about these things, and that's fine. Quinn on Monday saying we'll have more on some of the other injuries, including Terry's on Wednesday, to now we've gotten multiple reports about seeking many different opinions. And Dr. Sabah, there you go. With, what she believes we are going to find out. We'll see. I know others are shaking their heads saying she was involved in 20 different surgeries with this guy. Yes, Sabah is a doctor, for those of you that didn't know. She's also a very passionate football fan, Washington football fan. I'm sure she would have had her arm raised high up into the air had Taylor Heineke had a sports hernia injury. She would have loved to have been involved in that surgery on Taylor Heineke. But fortunately, he didn't have that injury at any point during his career. Some quick NFL news. Tom Brady, in his in his weekly newsletter, he writes a weekly newsletter entitled Do Your Job, responded to those that believe there's a conflict between him calling games as the Fox lead number one team analyst and being a part owner of the Las Vegas Raiders, to the extent in which he is talking to Chip Kelly, the offensive coordinator, and Pete Carroll, the head coach, multiple times a week, and sitting in the box during the game on the headset, as he was viewed a week and a half ago, or just over 2 weeks, or just over a week ago, in that game in Vegas against the Chargers. He wrote the following, quote, "Only the paranoid and distrustful would believe that there's a conflict. I love football. At its core, it is a game of principles. And with all the success it has given me, I feel I have a moral and ethical duty to the sport, which is why the point where my roles in it intersect is not actually a point of conflict, despite what the paranoid and distrustful might believe. Rather, it's the place from which my ethical duty emerges to grow, evolve, and improve the game that has given me everything." Closed quote. Yeah, that's nice, Tom. And you are the GOAT. And as we've talked about this on this show anyway, I don't believe that Tom Brady is using the information from conversations with coaches and coordinators and players to use it as a competitive gain for the team that he is not only a part owner of, but also apparently is involved in terms of talking to coaches, head coach, offensive coordinator, and even sitting in on the headset on some of these games. No one's made that accusation. The issue is optics. And as much as Tom Brady is a believable figure as the greatest quarterback in the history of the game, the NFL can't really afford to have those optics and that perception. And by the way, teams will have those perceptions as well. And the teams can protect themselves, clearly, even if they totally believe in Tom Brady and the information that they are sharing with him is the utmost of confidential, other than to use for during the calling of the game that he's the lead analyst on. But teams don't have to tell him anything. Teams can, essentially give Tom Brady and Kevin Burkhardt and their producers no information at all, or even bogus information if they want to lead them astray, which, by the way, I think has probably happened in the past too. There are lots of teams that don't give up anything. There are probably some teams that, figure, it's not going to be a problem if I give them information that isn't accurate. But what we have found over the years is that, and this is why I'm usually very intent on listening to the broadcasters that call my team's games, is they will get a nugget or two and they'll let that nugget loose at some point during the game. Insight, background information that perhaps nobody else has gotten. All right, Ben Standing next. Ben Standig is with us. We'll carry Quinn live at 12:30. He is set to address the media. I don't know what we're going to learn from him. Maybe Ben has a hunch. Ben, of course, writes for Substack, has a great reporting / column that you should subscribe to. You can get access to it at Ben Standig on X. So let's talk Terry first, because yesterday the news came out that he was seeking a second opinion. Now we've got news that he is seeking multiple opinions. Our own Dr. Sabah, who has done 20 surgeries, she let us know, with this Dr. William Myers, who Ian Rappaport reported Terry had sought out. She believes that Myers is the world-renowned expert on sports hernias, and if it's a hernia, it's 6 weeks before he comes back to playing football. That is, one of our regular callers. She is a doctor. Take it for what it's worth. But what do you make of Terry's injury and the news around it here over the last 12 hours or so?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, obviously, like you said, we don't know for sure, and I'm going to guess we may not know much more today. Whether it was, I don't know if Dan Quinn's going to give us tons of information on it, but obviously it would be a huge blow if he's out at all, even just for one game. This is, as we've discussed 1,000 times now, this is not a deep group at receiver. They already had Noah Brown out last week. We'll see if he's able to go. So that would be a huge blow from that perspective. But I mean, the other perspective, and look, Terry is a guy who has not missed a game since 2019. I think was the last time he missed a game. And is it coincidental that he potentially could miss a game or more now, the after he missing all of training camp because of the contract dispute, when everybody always says, hey, if you miss all of training camp, these types of injuries are more likely to occur? I mean, obviously I can't officially link anything to it, but it seems like it's pretty decent circumstantial evidence. And that was the fear, I think that we all had to a degree once he was, missing day after day after day. So, if he's out at all, even just for the one game, I think it's a huge blow. If he's out for for a while, then they are really going to be hurting. I mean, to lose him potentially, having already lost Austin Eckler, one of your better pass catchers, with Noah Brown iffy at best right now, and the rest of your receiving room is, Debo again. I don't really count him as a wide receiver per se, but okay, you have Debo, and then what? I don't know. So this would be a pretty significant one, and again, not just because he's talented, but because of what's behind him.
Yeah, I want to get into that a little bit more. I also don't want to spend a lot of time on this because everybody's emotional and was emotional and passionate about the subject as it was going on all off season, about, if the two are linked. Let's just suggest that, as you said, circumstantial evidence, he's never been hurt before and he didn't, participate in camp. But assigning blame at this point is ridiculous because you could make the case for both sides. In fact, I think personally, you could make the case that Terry and his agent should have gotten real about their value much sooner and come to a deal and gotten into camp and had a much fuller summer. Some of you would say, no, the team should have just overpaid him and gotten it done since you're in this window of trying to win big. So that aside, it right now feels like they're probably not going to have him for at least a week. So let's get into what you just started a little bit more in depth. Like Debo Samuel would be the only regular player at a wide receiver position, and he's not even a true wide receiver that would be suiting up. How would you see kind of the snap counts playing out if both Terry and Noah Brown don't play Sunday in Atlanta?
Oh boy. Well, this is where it gets, super confusing in terms of just pure receivers. Look, I would think Jalen Lane would play a lot, and Luke McCaffrey, that was his best game this past one, but still, I don't know how confident anybody is in him as a pure starter, having to beat corners when there's nobody else on the field to really distract, the defense. And, Jalen Lane is more of a slot guy than he is an outside guy. To some degree, Luke might be viewed that way as well. And so is Debo. So you potentially would have your top three receivers are all slot guys, more or less, to boot. Now, Chris Moore exists too, but, he's he's helped a little bit here and there, but he's more of a bit player for sure. But even if you then said, okay, well, maybe you lean more into, say, 12 personnel. Well, is John Bates playing? I don't know. The most of the 12 personnel they did this past week was like when Trent Scott was on the field more than it was Ben Sinnott, who, by Dan Quinn and others, said, hey, he had a pretty good game as a blocker. We know in theory he's a guy that they have some faith in as a pass catcher, but, how does that work? And, could you go more with, two backs? Maybe. I mean, that may, we're getting to the point where, this always reminds me of like a basketball team where, a college basketball team where, like, your top two big men are in foul trouble or hurt, and now all of a sudden you're going with this like 6'5" and under lineup and trying to confuse the other team by, some sort of shenanigans or whatever. So we're reaching
shenanigans. Yeah. We're going to play a lot of zone, and we're going small. We're going small with the two bigs in foul trouble.
Yeah, I mean, look, if people want to see Ja'Cory Brooks off the practice squad, this could be the time for that, but that's not, that's.
Who cares if people want to see it? Do you think that would be a possibility? Because I do. If both Brown and McLaurin are out, that would be the obvious move, right?
Yeah, no, of course. They don't even have that many receivers at this point. Purely just to, fill in the depth chart, you would have to bring up somebody else from the practice squad. And, he's not the only one there, but presumably Ja'Cory Brooks would be maybe the next guy in line. But, it would be, it's extremely problematic to say the least. And, this goes back to the discussion we had at the beginning of the year when trying to assess, what do we think about this team? And you can look at the roster and you can look at the staff and the camaraderie and all these things and say, hey, they should have another successful year. But the notion of regression, it's not something you can definitively point to and say this is going to happen. But the point is things even out over time. And they had really good injury luck last year, relatively speaking. And they've had miserable injury luck so far. And that's even before we know what Terry's deal officially is. So, it is a rough one. And to that spot in particular, again, I'm not saying like losing Austin Eckler is good, but like at least they have other options. Even losing Jaden, as great as he is, you have a guy in Marcus Mariota who's a highly competent player. It's not so much the case here at receiver with this room. So it would be tough.
Yeah, and let me just remind everybody, including ourselves, that while it does seem from an injury standpoint that things are kind of like the walls are closing in, they're 2-1, and they're a short favorite anyway to get to 3-1 on Sunday in Atlanta. The season isn't about to come apart. I'll tell you, the game Sunday was crucial. It really was a game, as they weather this storm. We don't know if it'll be a season-long storm, but as we weather this early season injury storm, it was crucial to get that game on Sunday, and the setup for it was great. What's ironic is that the setup for Sunday's game actually goes more Atlanta's way. We're talking to Ben Standig. Let's get to Jaden Daniels. So what do you expect? Do you have a hunch right now if he's going to practice, if he's going to talk, if he's going to start Sunday in Atlanta or not?
Well, one potential clue we're going to get should come up here soon. Not only practice, but today is the day that the starting quarterback talks. Last week we did get Mariota, and it played out that way. I don't know who's going to be sitting at the dais or at the podium or whatever after practice today. We'll see. If I had to guess on that, I would guess it's probably not Jaden, just so he doesn't have to answer questions one way or the other about any of this and let Mariota get up there again. But beyond that, we'll see. If he's not out there, I would say at least by tomorrow, then I would imagine he's missing another game. Maybe you could even say, hey, if he's not out there today doing at least something, that would be a bad sign as well. We don't, again, Dan Quinn's been pretty tight with the information on injuries, so we don't quite know how close he was. It doesn't seem like it was particularly close last week, just based on the anecdotal evidence that we have. But I know Dan Quinn said this week, and I buy it, that there's no correlation between the comfort they have in Marcus Mariota starting again and whether or not Jaden would play. If Jaden's healthy, they're going to play him. But as you said, they're 2-1. Mariota looked good. You know, they can't just completely block that out of their head. So I would imagine if there's any doubt, they would stick with Mariota.
Yeah, if there's any doubt on his health, it's too early in the season, and you won a game that you really needed to kind of win and take care of, so you can go ahead and play Marcus Mariota. By the way, there's this quote that I wanted to read from Kurt Warner, Hall of Fame quarterback Kurt Warner. He tweeted this out yesterday afternoon. Right now, my two favorite play designer callers are Shane Steichen, Indianapolis, and Cliff Kingsbury. Majority are good, solid concepts that connect and have answers for the quarterback. Really enjoy popping on their tape and would like to play for them, exclamation point. On a side note, Marcus Mariota may not be a starter in every system, but he's in the right system in Washington. And I believe if Jaden Daniels wasn't there, he'd be a solid starter in the NFL there, meaning in DC. This is what you and I talked about on Monday, is that this is probably the best system he's ever been a part of. And he's got to find that place in the offseason after the season ends, or he won't be that quarterback. A lot of you tweeted me and said, if Kingsbury leaves for a head coaching job, he takes Marcus Mariota as his bridge quarterback, or maybe not even as his bridge. You agree with Kurt Warner on that, right?
I mean, certainly he has looked as comfortable as we can recall in some time. Obviously he didn't play really in Philly, and his Atlanta stint ended very abruptly. We've always known he's had the talent, but it's always it's just been a bit up and down for him throughout his career. Look, clearly he loves being here, and they love having him, and that's great. I also imagine if somebody had come to him this offseason and said, hey, we really like what you did in Washington. We want you to be our starter. We'll pay you X amount of money, for to do this or to be in the mix or whatever, that he would have taken that. But maybe not. I don't know. I guess as good as he's doing here, it is in a short-term basis. How he would do over a 17-game schedule, who knows? I mean, I don't know the worst. I don't know that I'm prepared to say he's somebody's starter. Bridge, okay. I mean, obviously that's kind of what they brought him in here for. If the rookie quarterback, whoever it was going to be, wasn't ready, and he's very capably filled in now several times when Jaden's been out. So all that's good, but I don't know that he's somebody's starter or a guy you're trying to build around. I don't know that Cliff is saying, hey, come with me. Who knows? I don't know about that.
Yeah. I think what's really interesting about him and his recent journey is it's entirely possible that he's just happy here being a backup and being called on when needed. You never know. All right. It sounds like you are getting out of your car and walking into the building in Ashburn. I will let you go. I appreciate it. I will talk to you on Friday.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Kevin. Thanks.
Ben Standig, everybody. Dan Quinn set to speak in about 15 minutes. I wanted you to hear some of the stuff coming out of Atlanta about Raheem Morris and about the Falcons offense. We'll play some of that. We'll try to get to some NFL buy and sell today. We may not hit that until tomorrow. But also an interesting number about a corner on our team that hasn't played that well through 3 games, which is a bit of a surprise. So we got a lot left on this show, including Quinn at 12:30. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, and the Team980.com.
telling you, I'm looking right in your eye. If Marcus Mariota is quarterback in the Commanders, he is not coming in here to end the Falcons season. That cannot happen in the bins.
Be careful what you say.
We better
be careful.
Raheem Morris
what you say
needs to be careful.
If we lose
about
to Marcus Mariota next week,
I'm telling you, I think Jaden Daniels going to play. But if we lose to Marcus Mariota, you fire him right then. You fire him. Period. I don't want to hear it after that.
That was 680 The Fan in Atlanta. If the Falcons lose to Marcus Mariota on Sunday, Raheem Morris should be fired. They are fired up down in Atlanta. Michael Penix Jr., it is so early on him. We had Josh Kendall from The Athletic on last hour. He covers the Falcons. They are big believers down there in Michael Penix Jr. They're not moving off him anytime soon. We've heard that before in situations with young quarterbacks, but the key is the locker room. I remember Mike Shanahan many years ago saying, once you lose the locker room on a quarterback and you don't address it, you're done. Your team is finished. So we'll see what happens there. It could be a benefit for Washington getting Michael Penix Jr. this week if he's still struggling. I'll read from something that was written in the in ESPN's column today. This is from Dan Graziano, talking to people around the league about Michael Penix Jr. They believe he's got the arm talent to be special, but what they're saying right now is he's just not seeing it. In other words, defenses are clouding the picture and confusing the young quarterback. Penix appeared to be playing more freely late last season and has the arm strength to utilize the entire field. So he can throw it, but he isn't seeing it right now. Big opportunity for Washington's defense. The key will be stopping the run. Very interesting note from by the way, that was Jeremy Fowler who reported that, not Graziano, my fault. Fowler also wrote that the Falcons, who have relied on a lot of 12 personnel this year with, the one back and the two tight ends, that second tight end is Charlie Warner to go along with Kyle Pitts. Charlie Warner played 56 snaps, and they ran the ball right down the Vikings' throat in week 2. And then they got away from 12 personnel for some reason against the Panthers. And Charlie Warner played just 14 snaps. Now, he was banged up with an ankle injury, but they had another tight end they did not put in there. I would expect a lot of 12 personnel and the attempt to run the football against Washington's defense. This will be, I said it earlier, the run defense has been through 3 weeks improved from last year. Kinlaw, Payne's playing at a high level, Armstrong, Wagner, et cetera. They're playing at a very, improved level from last year. But let's not forget that 2 of the opponents had major O-line issues, the Giants and the Raiders. So now you're getting a team that is better up front and has an elite level back and one of the best number 2 backs in the game. I think you're going to see a lot of 12 personnel, which means you'll have a lot of base 4-3 for Washington. And do they need to load the box to stop the run, or can they do it with their front 7 and cover on the back end? We'll see. But that will be a big part, I think, of Sunday's matchup, especially Washington's defense against Atlanta's offense. This was Pro Football Focus's Dalton Wasserman talking about Atlanta's offense and play calling.
I don't think this is all on Michael Penix. I think this Falcons offense is not entirely sure of what it wants to be. Right now, the play calling for me is a bit vanilla. I think it's the football equivalent of tipping your pitches. The disturbing part to me, first and foremost, I think there's still, it feels like running this offense like it's Kirk Cousins back there with a 80% recovered Achilles. Remember last year they wouldn't get under center at all?
Yes.
And it was just like they had to be in the gun or in the pistol because he couldn't move. Yeah, they're still kind of running their offense like that. Through 3 games, they've only gone under center 13 times, which for a team that wants to get down and run the football and run a Shanahan, McVay-ish kind of offense, first of all, they need to get under center more. Those 13 plays when they've gotten under center, They've run on 12 out of 13 of those plays. One play action pass in the first game that was incomplete. So 92% run rate when they're under center, highest in the NFL. When they get in the shotgun, 93% pass rate when they're in the gun. There's no shotgun run game. It's not if they're in the gun, highest pass rate in the NFL. When they're in the pistol, and they use the pistol more than any team in the league by a pretty wide margin, they're more than 70% run. Also, fourth lowest play action rate in the league for a guy in Michael Penix, who, when he was at Washington his final year, was the best play action passer in the country. You have a good O-line. You have Bijan Robinson. You have Tyler Algier. The play action game, theoretically, should work so well.
Yeah, that should be a Falcons bread and butter.
Especially with what you showed in the run game last week in dominating Minnesota on the ground.
Right.
And you have Michael Penix, who has an absolute hose, top 5 or 6 arm in football, something like that.
Yeah. Oh, Michael Penix?
Yeah.
Yes.
Lowest deep passing rate in the NFL, 4%. This offense is not at all being tailored to the players that they have and what they probably should be doing. I'll be honest with you. I think I would take at least 2/3 of what they do in the pistol. I would get under center because there's not an ounce of deception. I really think they're I think they're tipping their pitches offensively.
Interesting stuff, man. Zach Robinson came out of the Sean McVay Rams offense. He was the OC during their Super Bowl season with Stafford. Last year, there was a lot of complaining about the play calling, about what they did with Cousins before he got benched late in the year. Advantage Washington Sunday defense against Atlanta's offense, I guess, unless they just can line it up in 12 personnel, maybe even more than 12, maybe 3 tight ends, and run it at Washington. We'll see. I said that there's a stat out there, this from my guy Alex, who sent me this. Per Pro Football Focus, Mike Sanderstill is struggling through 3 games. Quarterbacks per PFF have a 123.9 NFL passer rating against him. He's given up 13 receptions for 114 yards and 1 touchdown. He has struggled a little bit, and now the secondary, we'll see about Amos. We'll hear something about his injury. We haven't even really talked about that today, maybe in a few minutes with Quinn. But, the secondary, which I think a lot of people were really optimistic about, that it was going to be a strength defensively, a strength of the football team because of the additions, the Trey Amos addition in particular. And Sam was still coming back for his second season after a very solid rookie season. It has struggled. Now, last week it was banged up, but there have been communication issues certainly in that secondary. And you wonder if it's personnel or whether it's scheme, play calling, etc. Yeah. The good news is they've had a pass rush and they've stopped the run at a much better rate than they did a year ago. All right. Let's get to a break. Dan Quinn's about to address the media out in Ashburn. We will carry that live when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
All right. Happy Wednesday, everybody. It is September 23rd. We start off with Oklahoma State head coach Mike Gundy. He was let go yesterday after more than 20 years in his position. Firing comes after Oklahoma State's first loss to Tulsa since 1951, and the writing was on the wall already prior to this season with a winless Big 12 schedule last year after a 52-0 loss against Colorado. The Guardians, they caught the Detroit Tigers in the race to win the AL Central after Detroit's star pitcher Tarek Skubal collapsed and gave up 3 runs in the 6th inning with a 2-0 lead. The Guardians playing hot right now. They are 9-1 in their last 10, and the Tigers sliding as they are 1-9 in their last 10 games. They are now tied for the lead in the AL Central with just a few games to go remaining in the season. The Nats, they fall to the Braves by a score of 3-2. Brad Lord goes 6 innings, giving up 4 hits and 2 earned runs, both of which were solo home runs. The boys unable to light up the offense outside of a James Woods solo home run. They will take on the Braves one final time this season before turning their attention to the Chicago White Sox. First pitch just minutes ago, 12:15. Nats on deck with Charlie and Dave was at 11:45 on the Fan. This update is sponsored by Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Denton's office throughout all football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
All right, Dan Quinn expected to address the media here momentarily. We will carry that live when it happens. Drew Brees, Larry Fitzgerald will be eligible in their first year of Hall of Fame possibilities. They're two of the nominees among the modern era players. That was announced today for the 2026 Pro Football Hall of Fame class. The other nominees in their first year of eligibility are quarterbacks Phillip Rivers and Alex Smith. That actually was interesting to me. I don't see the Alex Smith case for the Hall of Fame. Tight ends Greg Olson, Jason Witten, running backs Frank Gore, LaShawn McCoy, offensive lineman David DeCastro, Marquise Pouncey, Geno Atkins, and Jarrell Casey are the defensive players, along with linebacker Thomas Davis. Remember, he was here briefly with Rivera coming from Carolina. The screening committee will reduce the candidates to 50 in October, with then down to 25, etc. The other returning finalists from last year are Eli Manning, Fred Taylor, Steve Smith Jr., Reggie Wayne, Jahari Evans, Marshall Yanda, Terrell Suggs, and Darren Woodson. Drew Brees and Larry Fitzgerald, to me, are first ballot Hall of Famers. Did you hear what Drew Brees said on the Stephen A. Smith show on ESPN yesterday? We got Quinn now? I'll save the Drew Brees stuff for later. Here's Dan Quinn live in Ashburn.
All right. What's up, everybody? All right. Told you I'd have an update on injury, and I'll kind of get started on that, and then we'll get into the game. So first, let's start with Jaden. He'll continue in his return to play process, and you'll see him out there today in a limited fashion. And we'll continue to rely on the medical team, to fully clear him. But what I can say is, man, he is doing everything you possibly can to get there. The guy's the ultimate competitor for us. You know that. I know that. But he is absolutely digging it. As far as the other injuries, we're going to work through that. And I'll take it through Friday and we'll give you the updates as it goes. Then lastly, just, the matchup for this weekend. And last time went into extra time, to go through that. And we expect that kind of same fight and battle again. We'll need to have that complementary football that we leaned into last week again. And ready to get rocking with you guys.
So with Terry, what can you say? Is he getting more information on his quad, and what's the level of concern for him for Sunday?
Yeah, it's pretty normal that when you have something that a second opinion takes place, that's not uncommon at all. Honestly, it's just the opposite. It's really common. Almost everybody does that in some spaces. So as we get into, I'll have a better answer, as I get closer to, or as I get into Friday, then we'll have a sense for, okay, where does it look like for Sunday?
And then with Jaden, what is it, that you've been able to watch him do so far? Is he able, you talked about the cutting and the pivoting. Have you been able to watch him do any of those kind of activities?
I have. And like I said, he's worked really hard on that space. And so we'll lean in on the medical side too, John, just to make sure they'll, be the ones to fully clear, but he's working really hard to hit all the stuff that he needs to hit.
Do you expect Terry to be at practice today?
I don't expect Terry to be at practice today. He will be out for today.
I'll
have updates for him by Friday of where we're at for the game.
Okay. Special teams question.
Yes.
I know you addressed it on Monday, but you mentioned how you that's part of your play style. You guys take a lot of pride in it. When did you start to feel like that could be sort of a weapon for you guys or give you guys an edge?
I'm going to go back because I think it's important on it, Nikki. When the new kickoff rule started, we were right at the front of that to say, can this be an advantage? Can we find a space that we could create that from field position to identity? So I thought it would begin there on the kickoff and kickoff return side. Then as we got to learn it better, and we were all kind of at the first part, remember there was a lot from OTAs through training camp. So I thought it began then, and then adding, obviously Tress, the way he can punt, putting people down, and the different style of players, like obviously Revo and, is at the front of it, but then it's Ballore and then Percy Butler and others that just started to emerge in this way. And we thought, man, this can be a weapon for us and we can really push and feature the guys and use them in those ways. But I think it was the kickoff and the decisions to say, we're going to go for it and really try to be at the front of this if we can. And I think that was the start of it.
Hey, Coach, I know you guys are very diligent in that return to play process, but is the fact that Sunday's game is, still September football, an early season game, does that time period shift whether or not you guys are going to maybe encourage guys to play Sunday versus if it were a postseason, late season game? Does that timeline factor in at all?
No. Yeah, I think they're all in the same space, and like the medical team putting the whole thing together for it. They have guidelines they want to follow. So no, I think everything's kind of the way we would go after it is consistent.
The way the team responded with Marcus, obviously there's a high level of confidence in him if Jaden Daniels can't go. What was he able to give you, and did you learn anything about him, even though you knew a lot about him already?
I don't know if I learned anything because of what I've seen, over the year and a half. I was one of the least surprised people that he would play well in the stadium because what I've seen out here and the work. I did know the work that he puts in to get himself ready. So I've seen all of that, Chick. So I don't know if I learned anything different other than confirming this is a real competitor, and this style and the attitude and the way that he plays just suits him, so well in this system.
You talked about Jeremy. Obviously, with Will out, he's probably in line for more playing time. What has most impressed you about him? I guess on the defensive side of the ball, we know what he does in special teams, but on defense,
what I noticed jumped from 2024 to 2025. Man, the speed elevated even again. Is that a year after being injured? Could be, but I felt like the speed and the tackling even ramped up more. I saw it in the preseason games. I saw it at practice too, and so we'd already seen some of that begin, but I felt the speed and the tackling, that position, he's usually right in the middle of all of it, but I did feel that level up in 2025 from spring training camp and into this early part of the season.
I know you won't know about Terry's status and probably Noah Brown as well until the end of the week, but if they can't go, what kind of opportunity would that be for guys like Jalen and Luke to get some more playing time?
Yeah, that's where you usually lead to when you don't know where that's going to be. What I do know is that we have a big, deep crew, at a lot of spots, and we train the players that don't count on this as a possibility, but more as a certainty of knowing that at some point, when that space comes where you're called upon, that you're able to deliver. It's one of the best feelings that you can provide to your teammates to do that. So what does that look like during the week at all the positions, showing you're ready, showing that you're able to. So when that opportunity comes, you're just ready to do it. Might be at one position one time and then another one. Hey, now it's at this one. And so you just push this 70-man roster all the way forward, all the way in. And if you can demonstrate you're ready, then when your opportunity comes, you have a lot of confidence because you've put the work in.
With an opponent making changes on the offensive side in terms of play calling and things like that, what sort of a challenge does that present for you? Maybe not knowing what to expect, or you can't worry about or guess at what might change.
Yeah, I can't worry about that. I think those things take place, and you speaks to his team's urgency, where they're at, what they're trying to hit on, what might be the emphasis for them. Sometimes it's with the player, to make sure he gets more touches. He does, more factor into it. So you have to let it play out. Those are out of our control. You're aware of those. But as far as trying to lean in too much to it, we generally don't do that.
With the kicking game, what, if any, is your level of concern about inconsistency there? And have you, or will you bring in anyone to compete for that spot?
Yeah, we have a lot of confidence in Matt to go. I was pleased to see, the one at the end of the half. So as we're going through it, we're still digging in to find our spaces to go. But no, we have full belief in that.
Hey, Dan, Sunday's going to be a special game for you, too, because obviously you coached in Atlanta. You have a lot of friends there, and I'm sure a lot of memories there. What is that going to be like for you going in there as a head coach of the Commanders, where you used to coach in Atlanta?
Well, it's not like a return to one go. We've played them, last year and, done it other times before, but always have huge gratitude for Arthur Blank, his family, and, giving me the opportunity to do that. But past that, it's for the guys and in between the white lines. So we'll be ready to battle too.
Coach, next man up seems like a cliche term used during sports, but with this team, with this organization, you all seem to thrive in these situations. What is it about this team that allows for them to excel in those moments?
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes I think that is too much of a cliche because there's another player behind that, the injury or what happened to take place. But what I do know, and what we do train hard as, there's going to be a spot, and when you're ready, you've got to go nail it. And if you're waiting for that moment to happen and then all of a sudden it hits you, you're not going to be as prepared as you could have been. And so the way that we go about it is everybody gets reps at practice to make sure they're pushing it to see where we go. We're evaluating, pushing the skills. So if we can continue to get better, when that moment comes and the opportunity is called upon, man, you're ready to deliver. So the competition helps that. We do some at each practice, just non-carded, non-scripted, offense versus defense, going to play. And that keeps a player sharp. They know they got to react. They got to make the plays and make the calls. But having all 70 in our mindset, that's a big part of who we are and how we do it, knowing there's going to be adversity. I think early on in my career, coach, you want this to happen, then this to happen, this to happen. Then you learn later, man, like sometimes that plan isn't there. This is how you have to go win the game. And that could be due to injury, them playing a different way. And so if you think in those ways, man, like be able to adjust. And when that time comes, you go let it rip. You have to have confidence in the people to do that. And we do.
Good afternoon, Coach.
Dan Quinn speaking live in Ashburn.
As a whole has been pretty strong for you guys this year. For the Falcons, their punter and their punt coverage team has also been pretty strong for them. How do you go about making sure that your strength can be stronger than theirs, and how big of a boost can that give you this weekend if you can make that happen?
Yeah, the field position, man, that's the thing. Can you find ways to get a long return, find ways that's, could be a first down, could be 2 first downs in terms of the field position. So finding your spaces, when they're trying to flip the field and somebody, not just Atlanta, but anybody kicks it deep, that's when you have a chance, because usually the long returns don't come, when you're, on a +50 punt. Those are the ones that you have your chance and you got to go. And then the outside guys are key for us, man, the gunners, and they've got to feel the speed and go after it. So it's definitely a good matchup this weekend on both sides, man. And like absolute, you'll feel speed and energy and toughness on both sides.
With Sam Cosmi, how is his rehab going? And with the ability to open his window come Monday, do you expect to open it then? Do you have a return to play plan in place for him there?
Yeah, we're working hard, and he has really put in the work. And so that's where we're aiming towards. And then as we get into next week, we'll see if he's ready to take that next step. But this another guy, man, has just all off season through the summer to put the work in. And so what are the last little bits of that? You try to simulate as much as you can, simulated sets, but he does need to be back in the team setting. So as soon as that can happen, that helps him in a normal ramp up process too.
Dan, with Dorrance Armstrong, when you guys brought him in, obviously you and Joe knew him well, would figure that his acclimation period would be maybe one of the faster ones, but it really wasn't until maybe the playoffs that his statistics at least really started to take off, and that's continued. Did something change for him, click? Was there something just over time that he developed, found more confidence in, whatever it was?
Yeah, and we'll have to look, Ben. That's a good question. Like, I felt there was significant pressure from DA, but maybe not the numbers from the sack standpoint. That might be something that we can look into. But now different sides for him. He's always been somebody that could be equipped to go over the guards, over the tackles, move into different locations. So we didn't do that as much with him last year. Dante mostly played one side. He mostly played the other. So now we're probably a little more fluid of how we feature the guys. But I think converting from a pressure into a sack, obviously that's a big deal. And I don't know, but I felt like the pressures were higher, even though maybe the sack numbers weren't as high. So that might be one thing that he's able to finish more so far.
All right. Thanks, Coach.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Dan Quinn, everybody. Not much, right? Pretty much pushing everything back to Friday, as he did a week ago. I'll read from last week's transcript 1 week ago on the plan for Jaden. Good rehab session, threw out on the field, won't practice today. Then we'll, give you more of an assessment on Friday. Now, today, what he said was he will practice, albeit in a limited fashion. That could be just throwing and moving and running. I don't know if we'll find out who took actually all of the reps in practice, but he's going to push off anything until Friday. By the way, I agree with the whole mindset here. You hold back all of this information until you have to give it, because you're putting a player on injured reserve. Now, as it relates to Terry, not going to practice today. Getting second opinions on the injury is pretty much a mainstay. It's common. But again, on him, we'll know more on Friday. So Jaden, a limited participant in practice, more on Friday. Terry out today, more on Friday. So there you go on that. What did you need me to check, Max?
So you know how last week Marcus Mariota was the one who spoke to the media?
Who's speaking to the media? Jaden is.
Today it is Jaden, and we just got that confirmed by Ben and JP. So do with that what you will.
All right. So there you go. Jaden Daniels will be addressing the media today as the quarterback from this practice. I guess last week, because he didn't really practice, it didn't make much sense. I don't know. That's a better sign for him on Sunday. but it's not a definitive sign. If he were a full go in practice, I think that would have been a definitive sign. But if you think that Quinn's not disseminating any information, Jaden's pretty good at that as well. They've coached those guys up really well out there. What else did he say today? Full confidence in Matt Gay. So there you go. Look, he was a 56-yard field goal miss away, and maybe a timeout by the Raiders there before he took that free swing and missed it, away from, having to face a lot of competition this week. I don't think there's any doubt about that. There was a question about during the press conference about the change in play calling for the Falcons. They have not changed their play caller. Zach Robinson is still their play caller. But what he is doing this week for the first time is he is moving down from the booth to the sideline. I guess they want him closer to Michael Penix Jr. Really intriguing game Sunday, certainly from an overall standpoint of the NFL card. That's not the game that's going to get the attention of most fans when you've got, Eagles, Bucks, you got Colts, Rams, you got Ravens, Chiefs, you got Packers, Cowboys. But a really interesting game in the NFC because Washington can get to 3-1, weathering all of these, early season injuries. And the Falcons would fall to 1-3, and there was certainly hope after week 2 that they had a chance to be a contender not only in their division but in the NFC as, at the very least, a wild card contender. And I think, for the Falcons, a lot will be learned about the Zach Robinson, Michael Penix Jr. situation, and for us, we're about to figure out, what they really have depth-wise at wide receiver, because it certainly would appear as if Terry's in jeopardy of missing, at the very least, a game. Nothing on Noah Brown, nothing on John Bates during his discussion there. So there you go. Some interesting things about Dorrance Armstrong there at the end. Yeah, it's been noticeable that he's been moved around a lot. It's funny to watch them live in the game and then go back and sort of watch it even more so. They, in certain situations, and I would say mostly third down situations, nobody's in a 3-point stance on the line of scrimmage. They really kind of move around. There's a lot of stunts going on with the linebackers in particular. But none of the D linemen have, a hand in the ground. Sometimes one or two do and two don't. Armstrong's one of those players that typically does not play in those situations with a hand in the ground. I've been so impressed, and I think many of you have as well, so impressed with the start that he has had. Quinn was also asked about, special teams. Look, he kind of patted his staff on the back, saying with the new kickoff rules, they were at the forefront of sort of addressing these things and trying to figure out how to use it to their advantage. I think a lot of teams, certainly spent a lot of time thinking about the rule change last year, and then the tweak to the rule change, a significant tweak heading into this season, penalizing teams for touchbacks by another 5 yards, which has made all the difference on the number of returns. The number of returns is up exponentially from where it's been. But there's some data out there through the first 3 weeks on opponents' starting field position and what's leading to it. Well, Washington did lead the league last year in the fewest percentage of kickoffs that were touchbacks. They did want to cover kicks. They thought that the 30-yard line, they could stop teams on average before the 30-yard line. And more importantly, because Quinn talked about this all last year, and he's already talked about it multiple times this year, they wanted to set a tone of being a physical football team, a team that embraced contact, and it started with kickoffs. Well, through the first 3 weeks of the season, Washington is 6th in the league, pretty good, in opponents' starting field position. The opponents are starting average field position, the 27.64 yard line. So basically the 28-yard line, if you round up there, versus touchbacks, it would start at the 35. So they're gaining 7 yards by covering kicks. They have not yet given up, right? I don't think they have. A massive, back-breaking kickoff return. By the way, Carolina, number 1 in the league in opponents' average starting field position, the 21-yard line. The Rams are second at the 21.65-yard line. The Falcons, Washington's opponent, third in the league with opponents starting at the 26-yard line. The Giants are actually fourth. The Texans are fifth. What's interesting about that list is 4 of the worst teams in the league right now, record-wise, are in the top 6, or in the top 5. The Giants, Falcons, Panthers, and Texans, who are winless in their first 3. But I think it's an important number, and I think part of what we've seen on these kickoffs is if you can get the ball to sort of knuckle through the air rather than be an easy-to-catch football where the returners have to kind of let it hit and bounce, that's where the teams have been the most effective in covering kicks. The knuckleball kickoff that you can get to land inside the 20 and before the goal line is the hardest to field and gives you an advantage in kick coverage. By the way, the worst in the league, the 49ers are allowing teams to start on average at the 33.8-yard line or the 34 rounded up. That's a big part of the game now. Huge part of the game. And Washington has excelled on both sides of it. The coverage side of it and the return side of it with Deebo Samuel. And even with Luke McCaffrey, who has had some good returns as well and was close to a big return on Sunday, but just kind of stumbled. I think you throw that together with Washington's excellent punt coverage, which they've been very good at. They were last year, and they have been so far this year, along with now Jalen Lane as a legitimate home run threat as a punt returner. Washington's gaining a lot through those, few special teams plays in a game. I was looking at something too. Jeremy McNichols has played a lot of special teams since they brought him here in 2024. He basically played nearly half of the special team snaps in 2024. Well, Sunday, 0 special team snaps for Jeremy McNichols. And that's a sign, forget the result, what happened in the game, but they didn't plan on playing him on special teams because he was going to be a big part of the running back by committee. It was going to be Rodriguez. It was going to be Bill. But they had plans to use Jeremy McNichols as an equal part of that running back by committee. And I don't expect that to change. The fact that this guy's been a significant special teams player and didn't take one special team snap for the first time since he got to Washington, that was the plan going in, which meant they knew he was going to be a big part of it. Now, I think we could have guessed he was going to be a big part of the Eckler third down, responsibilities, but we saw him on first down and second down, and we saw some good results. It'll be interesting to see if McNichols actually has a chance to end up being the surprise lead back for them if they end up going with somebody more than the other two. I don't know if that'll happen, but they have a lot of confidence in him. All right, we are done for the day. Chris Russell's next.